So good morning, everyone. I will call this budget deliberation for November 23rd, 2024 at the Riverside-Albert Rec Centre in Riverside-Albert, New Brunswick to order. First matter of business is the adoption of the agenda. The agenda for today's meeting was circulated in advance. I'll accept a motion to adopt the agenda as circulated. So moved by Councillor Jonah, seconded by Councillor Elderkin. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by stating aye. Aye. Opposed, if any? Motion's carried unanimously. Any conflict of interest to declare in relation to today's agenda? Not hearing any, we'll move on to the continuation of the budget deliberations. So welcome everyone to the second day of these budget deliberations to review the draft 2025 general operating and utility budgets compiled by the administrative team. The agenda for today's meeting will proceed as follows, a little different from the first one. We'll continue with the review of the draft budget that was being presented by administration on November 19th. We left the discussion on that day at the end of transportation services. We'll begin by looking at environmental health services. Before we do, I will ask administration to speak to the questions that were asked on the 19th and to address the questions that were brought forward.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I will start to say that our Director of Operations will be joining us as soon as he is able to with the power outage in Alma. Him and the on-call operator are just dealing with the water and the generator there, but he'll be joining us as soon as he's able to. The Treasurer and I did submit an email yesterday with answers to some of the questions that Council had brought up at the last meeting. If anybody had any questions or clarifications required on that, we can answer those now.
Anyone have any questions? Councillor Ward Russell.
At some point, I'd like to go back and look at the fire budget again, so if we could do that at some point this morning, that would be good.
Okay. Any other questions? Nope. If not, maybe it would be timely to go back and see what Councillor Ward Russell's wishes are with the fire budget.
With the fire, start with that?
Yeah, so we'll start with that. Yep.
Okay. I'm just got a couple questions or maybe comments with regards to the TMR radios. From what I understand is that you're looking to purchase 50 new radios.
Correct.
Correct. Between Riverside, Hillsborough, and Alma. I think I've expressed I find that is a little high. I mean, it's all at once. I think I suggested that maybe if we could look at that number again and do it over a couple years, it might be a little easier on our budget. I think we've got to look at wants versus, needs at this point. I did made a few phone calls over the last couple days just to some other municipalities that would be, in our area, or not our area, but that are in the same situation. And just for instance, Sackville, which is a volunteer organization, they have 43 volunteers and they have 5 TMR radios. Point of view, they are still using the ones that were supplied from the province, and they have 6 to 7 TMR radios, and no interest in getting new ones. I did call Review. I understand that Review is a little, different operational skills than what we have here, but they have. What did you tell me? They only have they have 30 radios. But it's, it is a different operational, it is a full-time system there. Same thing with Three Rivers as well. Same thing. They, it's not based on a radio per each firefighter. So what I understand is that the old radios will still work. They just won't be able to talk back. So what Sackville does is that the deputy has one, the chief has one, and one other person, and the remaining radios stay in the truck. So when the truck arrives on scene, those radios can be used at that point.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments as it relates to that? And just as a point of clarification, as far as the budget is concerned, it's not all the radios that are being paid for out of this year's budget. It would be a portion of them because there was funding put away in 2024 that was not used. And that's going to be put in a capital account, I believe, Treasurer?
Yes.
Put in a capital account and then to purchase. One of the, I guess, complicating factors with our municipality is that we have 3 volunteer fire departments, not just 1 or 2. We have 3, and that the fire chiefs require that each one of the firefighters has a radio. Now, whether or not council wants to see that as a combination of TMR and VHF is entirely up to this municipality. Word of caution, as I've mentioned before, is that the province no longer supports the VHF system, and if the VHF tower goes down, we are responsible to repair it. So that is just a consideration for this council. So, any other comments to provide?
Yeah, I did reach out to our fire chief last night, and he definitely supports the TMR radio transition, but he doesn't feel that they all need to have a radio in the first year. That's his comment, that it can be spread out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if there is a savings there we can get.
Well, if you buy fewer, it costs less.
Correct.
Yeah.
So they do have some now. I don't know where the 50 were allocated to, like what the percentage that was going to Alma, Riverside-Albert, and Hillsborough.
It was in the report. It was 27 for
Oh, right, I did see that,
27
and
for
11
Hillsborough,
yeah, so.
and then 11 each for Riverside-Albert and Elm.
Right, so in talking just to our fire chief here was, he'd be happy with 8 for this year if that's a possibility, if that saves a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Any other views, comments? Councillor Coates?
Have we did a costing of what you have to mobile in the mobiles, but the trucks have to have
A base unit?
The trucks are already equipped with the base units.
okay, with TMR,
Yes.
every truck.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about the new Riverside truck, but each department was provided, I believe, one mobile unit.
Okay, so we're talking about the portable
Correct.
TMR.
Yeah.
Okay. How much did we put this year in the budget for TMRs?
I'd have to ask our treasurer that question.
I budgeted enough to buy the radios that were selected with the capital funds that we have from this year.
Okay. So the treasurer has budgeted enough for all 50 radios. And the 50 radios include one for the EMO, which is necessary.
Yes.
Because our EMO center needs to be able to communicate with fire service in the event of an emergency. But I would add that buying fewer is definitely an option. It's sort of like what we were doing last year, which was we put some funding away for some in 2024. The plan was to do it over 2 years. Now, if the suggestion is that we not buy them all and buy them over 3 years, that's certainly something that can be done.
So the surplus, I think, if I remember right, is 75,000 that we were putting over to put away.
I would have to check my projections to give you a definite answer, but it was upwards of around that amount.
Right, but there's still, but that doesn't cover all 50 TMR radios.
No.
No, so I guess my question is, what is the difference? Did we put 75 or 60 in this year's budget?
For this year's budget, it's 120,000.
Plus the 75 from
Yeah.
last year, right?
And I know I think it was Hillsborough, they need some new radios because some of their members' radios are not working anymore and they have to replace them. And I think Riverside-Albert, I know they've just taken some in to get new batteries and things like that. So if we're not buying new ones for everyone, I have to go back to the fire department to see what their function of radios they have that are VHF, to see what we have to replace there as well, to keep that in mind for next year's budget.
I mean, I certainly see the importance of it all.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
do,
Mhm.
but it's a big expense.
Oh, yeah,
And
of course.
we're
Yeah.
not posh, so I know I don't want it to feel that I'm nitpicking this subject, but
Oh, not at all.
it's a huge cost
It's
on
a-
the bottom line.
But we can't just say we don't want to support the 50. How many do we want to purchase?
Well, that's, I mean, can we split it in half? Can we go for 25?
Yeah, we,
I mean, it's a decision of council.
yeah, so it's 25, there are three, I believe there are 34,
3766 for
30
the bundle.
37,
66.
3766 per package, and they come with a radio, the charger, a spare battery,
Mhm.
and I believe a leather carrier, and a microphone.
Do all those other costs, are those associated, or are those? with
Those
the
are just,
37?
those are cost per item, but that's not what's being,
You can do the bundle.
the bundle is 50 times the top line. Yeah.
So with the 75,000 we put away last year,
Right?
and we're talking $3,700 or so, that leaves $115,000 that we have to put in this year's budget to purchase all 50.
It would be more than that, I believe.
Quick math, maybe made my math off, but I even rounded up a touch.
So I'd say about about 20,000. If we just bought half of them, we could take 100 off. But I'd like to double check with the fire department to see how many new VHF radios they require before, like, I give a final number for that.
Yeah.
But I think like a VHF radio usually run about $1,000–1,500, so they're about half the price. But I'd like to go back with the chiefs just to double check to ensure that they have the radios they need for next year.
The folks who don't have a radio that's working, they could be the priority to receive
For
a
the new
TMR
TMR.
radio. However, if they require new batteries, let's keep in mind that we would be buying batteries for old equipment that we eventually plan to phase out. So if we're spending thousands of dollars, eventually those will be phased out. Not sure whether that's a good use of money. Just putting that out there for you.
Oh, and that's exactly why we're here, is to
Yeah.
put things out there, and it's a huge expense, and and I see the importance, and I understand the idea of being recorded, but my understanding is as long as the chiefs and the deputy chiefs and the key decision makers have
The TMR.
the TMR, so they're being recorded as to what's happening. That's the most important thing. I'm not, if I've misunderstood that, then I've misunderstood it, but that's my,
Yeah.
If I may, I agree with Loretta and Councilor Russell. I think we need to take a look at buying half of them, go back to our fire chiefs and see if they can make that work, and see how much cost extra it's gonna get to use the old radios to get them up to speed, and do the comparison and see where we're at.
Mhm.
Because this budget is quite large.
Yep.
Somewhere's in here, we gotta put some pencil in there, cut it down. Just my notes.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Coates.
Some of the, or most of the fire departments now have some TMR.
And we do as well. They were seed radios when they came out with the program.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it is 4 and 4, right? So we already have, for each of the departments has 4
For seed radios.
seed
Yeah.
radios. And
Which
the
are the
4500,
portables.
Yeah.
Which is a good start.
Well, these would be over and above. What we were talking about would be
Yep.
over and above, I believe.
so I think there is a minimal need that I'm sure every fire department needs. It's just, you know,
On that number.
is to find that number, and is 50 the minimal need to start out?
Is it in 2025 or is it in 2026? And how we spread that out?
Well, she's already saved from this year 75,000 to put towards the TMR
Right.
radio. So if we can add a little bit to it, but not maybe 120,000, would be a little bit of a savings.
I would say that we would buy 15 this year. 6 for Hillsborough and 4 for each of Riverside, and 1 for the EMO.
So if you're suggesting that, Councillor Coates, it could mean that there is no money required for TMR radios because there's 75,000 being allocated from 2024 in a GIC to purchase radios.
I thought it was 50,000. 75?
75, I believe.
I think it is, yeah.
How much- how much
74,
was it?
75,000, my recollection.
I believe it was around 70, but I would have to double check.
My notes say 70.
You're on it.
Okay.
I'd be happy with that.
Half of what was budgeted for
Right.
2025.
Right. Like
Okay.
instead of budgeting, using what we're putting away from the surplus, plus adding to it to get 25 TMR radios.
To purchase 25 TMR radios.
I'd
Okay,
agree.
you can figure out what that would amount to when we recess.
And then see if the 3 fire chiefs can make do with,
Well, we're not gonna be, likely not gonna be able to get that answered today.
oh, no,
No, but we're gonna have to have another budget meeting anyway, so. All right. So we will, unless there's any other questions related to the answers that were provided the other day, we'll move on to where we left off, which was environmental health services. So the environmental health services in your workbook include solid waste collection at a cost of $599,732, which is an increase from $417,907 in 2024. Any comments to provide in relation to that? And that is in 2025, it's a shared cost. In 2024, those I believe were local costs based on individual contracts, which are now part of all one contract and cost allocated to Fundy Albert.
After
Yeah.
February.
And yeah, there is some amount there for continued waste collection by the Alma, or by Fundy Albert employees for Alma and Riverside until the beginning of the contract on February 1st, I believe.
Yes, plus the end contracts for the Ellisons in Hillsborough.
Correct, yeah. Deputy Mayor, comments, questions?
Yeah, so the shared aspect of this, and also the shared aspect of the tipping fee, which is just coming up just below this.
Mm-hmm.
The concept that we applied in 2024, that these were so-called equally shared. There was no inside-outside rate applied to these, much in the same way for cost of assessment. If you recall, we had that discussion the other day. Those were equally shared. I would recommend that both of these, tipping fee and the collection private contract, which is the miller, that are shared be equally shared, which means no application of the inside-outside rate on these two items, as we did this year.
Okay, so any other comments in relation to that, or agreement on Deputy Mayor Earl's suggestion that they be shared, and it's based on, I don't know how that would be based, whether it would be based on property assessment
Yeah, that's-
values in each area?
Yeah, and that's exactly how we did it this year.
For cost of assessment,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So that would mean that it would not be equally shared with the inside-outside rate applied to it.
It would be-
So in fact, it would become a local cost.
It becomes, in the budget.
In the
line,
budget,
it becomes
shows as a local
cost, which
cost.
is exactly what's been done for cost of assessment.
Yeah. Okay, any comments? No? And so I would, based on what I see there, my interpretation of that, or my view on that, is that's a fairly significant increase, but likely the result of, much like the snow removal contract in the community of Hillsborough last year, the cost went up drastically. And I suspect that was what happened here, is the cost of the solid waste collection contracts have gone up fairly significantly. But they're being managed by the Service Commission.
Yeah, if I recall, and I think it might even be in the budget package document somewhere, the cost as invoiced by, that one, as invoiced by the Service Commission is broken out according to.
Oh, is it?
something. Yeah. So that's what we should be using.
That would make sense.
But the same with tipping fee though. The tipping fee, which is not part of that, needs to be equally shared. The concept being that the baggage of garbage that is about to be dropped at the dump should cost the same no matter where in our
And
municipality.
that's part of that $44 cost per household.
Maybe.
It's gone
Maybe.
from 56, if you recall,
Maybe.
Deputy Mayor. It went
Yeah,
from
it could be.
$56 down
56
to $44.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and the result of that is because the Southeast Regional Service Commission is benefiting from the
Right.
circular
That's
materials
right.
refund or rebate. Yeah. All right. So unless there's any questions in relation to both items on the environmental health services, we'll move on.
Can I,
Yes?
Mayor, just to clarify, so when I go back, would you guys like all to see this broken down by subunit?
Yes.
Okay,
That's the suggestion.
okay.
Yep.
I just wanted agreement of all council.
Okay. The next line on public health services is cemeteries, and there is zero cost being attributed this year, so I don't think anybody would dispute that. Under public health services as well, under other is mosquito control. The cost for mosquito control, which is included in the mandated services for, actually a non-mandated service, but from the Service Commission, the costs have been reduced from $51.64 in 2024 to $4,634 in 2025. And that's only paid by the Coverdale Local District subunit.
Question on that.
Yes.
If we ever got any reports from them, I'd like to know, when they actually come and do their spraying and, how often they're actually in our area.
We can certainly ask for that, but the spraying, to my knowledge, has been done. And they're using a drone. They used a drone in 2024, not, it wasn't mechanically spread, so. Yes, Councillor Coates.
Do they, is that broke up for 6 and 5, or is it all to?
It's only Coverdale.
I got count. Number.
Only Ward,
Five.
only Ward 6.
It does cover some of Ward 5 would be benefiting from that as well, because they go down as far as Whitebirch.
We'll get some clarification from the Southeast District. But as it stands right now, it's only the Coverdale District that is being charged that amount.
You see, I've got lower Coverdale on the, from the store down. There's like 2 subdivisions down in there, so there should be part of it on 5.
Okay, right now it's just 6.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, Deputy Mayor?
Just like to make a personal comment.
Yep.
That I have checked with members of council who benefit from this, like physically benefit from this, or at least they believe they do, and they want to keep this.
Mhm.
But personally, I fall under the group of New Brunswickers that are under the stop spraying, New Brunswick. I find this a kind of a weird thing that we would want to be doing, but I understand that it's supported by council.
Yep.
But in general, so I will support this amount, but I think spraying anything in our communities there's got to be a better way.
Right.
That will be my position.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to environmental development services, which is in the area of planning. So the local planning costs from the Southeast Regional Service Commission in 2025 have increased to $204,274 from $187,712. And again, that's all part of the overall reduction of 2.81% for the mandated and non-mandated services by the Service Commission. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
This is another budget item that I wonder why we're not equally sharing this. This is the cost of planning, right? And so planning applies to the development in all of Fundy Albert in accordance with the currently 4 rural plans. So we're all covered by a rural plan now. We're trying to consolidate that into one rural plan. But the fact is if we leave it here as purely shared and we play the inside-outside rate thing, which I think we're going to, it means that the planning services per unit of tax base is more in the former village, costing more to the residents of the former villages than it is for the LSD areas. So whereas I do support inside-outside rate when the concept of proximity matters, so this is whether it's recreation or fire and so on, many places we apply this. To planning services, I think it makes no sense. In this, much the same way, cost of assessment and the tipping fee. So in my view, this should be equally shared, this item, which means that it's divided up according to our relative tax basis for the subunits, and it ends up as a local expense.
Any other views on that or support generally?
Good thought process. I never thought of it that way, to be honest.
Nope, and Deputy Mayor's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that would mean that the Coverdale district, which is showing the most growth, would pay the majority of that cost.
No, that's not. What it means is that we all equally share. It's not, no one's paying a majority,
But if it's based on tax base,
Yeah,
the
well,
tax
okay.
base is higher. And,
Yeah, they have their tax bases, I believe, in the order of 36% of the total of
Correct.
Fundy Albert, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what the result would be.
And what is this again? Can you describe
It's for
what that-
planning, permits and planning services. So in other words, the cost associated with the work done by Plan 360 as well as building inspections and so on.
That's right.
That's all factored in.
So this is an amount that our municipal government pays to the Service Commission.
Plan 360.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we benefit from that. And if the suggestion is that be essentially become a local cost based on tax base, then the revenue should be done that way as well.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Beautification and rehabilitation of lands. So the budget last year was 13,286, and this is a municipally shared cost to $16,714. So that's an increase of slightly more than $3,000. Yes.
So meeting
Sabra?
meeting the strategic aim of promoting tourism in Fundy Albert requires us to ensure that our community areas are presentable and something that people want to come and see. We must invest in sustainable solutions that reduce our ongoing costs for both maintenance and procurement, such as perennial gardens rather than repeat purchases of annual flowers. We must also look to modernize much of our Christmas lights and decor, such as the lobster tree, to ensure efficiency and safety. And that would explain some of the request.
Yeah. Any comments?
Well,
Yes, Deputy Mayor?
Just so clarification that, so the budget is essentially quite similar to last year, and it is shared, equally shared among the former villages according to tax
Correct.
base.
Yeah.
So the gardens that we do have currently maintaining, the idea is to continue to maintain those gardens, correct? Is that the plan?
We will come back with a work plan that would include things like that, correct?
Based on what's approved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I believe the CAO also mentioned maybe transitioning to perennials as opposed to annuals.
Well, yeah, so in the gardens themselves, that of course makes complete sense. And that's certainly what's been done in Alma, but the hanging
The
baskets
baskets is
are
not practical.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
right.
still
Yep.
budgeted for this year.
So here's one question I do have. When we see a number like this, and it's gonna come up in various other rows as well. So that, for instance, the total here is 16,714. Is that include people costs? No, it's the people costs
Is
are
under
where
salaries,
then?
under their salaries.
Are already paid under salaries.
Yeah, but which line item are
Workshops.
this
Yard-
workshop?
Yeah, that would be our public works staff.
Okay, which we saw quite a bit earlier, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
All right. Any other questions? Moving on, tree removal and planting. The budget last year was essentially the same from 2024 to 2025. I do have a question, because more and more we're seeing the need for tree removal. And this is a municipally shared cost between the 3 former municipalities. We, as a matter of fact, council was recently approached around the removal of a tree in Riverside-Albert by a presentation by a resident. So I'm wondering whether that is sufficient for, because as we saw, I believe there was one tree removed in 2024, or maybe even in 2023 in Riverside-Albert that cost in excess of $3,000 for one tree. So just keep that in mind as you make a determination of what's in that budget.
May I
Yes.
add a note, Mr. Mayor? The reason we had to take down that tree at Riverside-Albert is because it wasn't just because it was on our land, it was because it was dead and it was a danger to the community, and particularly the residents beside it.
Right.
So we typically use this line for, tree removal or planting. So it's not removal because someone doesn't like the tree, it's removal more so because it's dead and it's a danger.
Right.
Is that where you fall in, like the trimming of the altars and those kind of things too?
No, that
doesn't
ours-
fall under here.
No, most of our staff are getting safety trained to be able to complete that in-house, but this is for bigger trees that we have to bring a bucket truck in
Right.
Yeah.
with specialists.
I'm not suggesting to change it, I'm just making sure
Yeah,
that
no, I
council's
just-
aware that
further
there could be some
explanation.
increased demands, that's all. Any other questions, comments? Not, we'll move on. Natural Resources Development and Other, which is primarily the knotweed. In 2024, the budget was $6,330, and what is being shown here for 2025, I think, which is reflective of one of two options presented by a contractor, is the $25,000, which is for a knotweed program for all of Riverside-Albert, and it's showing as a municipally shared cost, some of which the contractor is suggesting would be throughout all of Riverside-Albert, so that wouldn't be just a municipally shared cost, it would be an entire community cost. Now, the only issue I have with that is I don't think our municipality should be engaged in providing knotweed eradication services on private property. And that's what's in option 2 of the contractors. I would rather like to see public education, some public education sessions put on by the contractor, or looking after municipal properties. I don't know if anybody else has any comments that they'd like to provide.
I got a question there.
Yes, Councillor Lyons?
Is it actually working? Like, we've seen some history of this in one particular area, but every time you go, it's still there. So are we gaining ground with this? Is this something that we're...
Based on what I see from the contractor, there appears to be some progress being made, but it's a very aggressive invasive species. And it is the only way that they're approaching it without the use of herbicides.
I know we got it through Riverside-Albert, there is a lot of it, and it is concerning, but we also have to look at the bottom line of this budget, where we're
Yep.
gonna end up, so, just my thoughts.
And my thoughts were similar to Mayor Rochelle's. I was a little not sure if it was just for the former villages or whether we were going into the LSD areas. Because if we're into the LSD areas, then it needs to be noted that under local services. Because I think in the past budget, was it not only Alma that had the knotweed?
It was primarily
budget?
Alma, but
Yeah.
there was a portion, I believe there was a portion of it that was attributed to Riverside-Albert, no?
No.
So I believe, and this was pre-me, but I believe that the last contract was supposed to be continuing the work in Alma and focusing on identifying other areas throughout Riverside-Albert that had now knotweed. And I believe the contractor was unable to secure maybe the students that they required in order to do that work. So the scope of that contract changed before the summertime. and Councillor Arrow might know a little
Yeah.
bit more than that, but I believe they were supposed to identify areas throughout the rest of Fundy Albert. That scope had to change because of lack of resources, so it was just basically focused. I think they've done some work. If you look at the report, there is a map of the areas that they've got some sites identified, so I think they've done some work in all of Fundy Albert based on what they were able to do last summer.
So I'd like to.
Yes,
add
Deputy
some
Mayor.
comments. First off, this is one area where I did submit a question to administration, because I believe that there's a misunderstanding, a written question, this is, a week ago. There's a misunderstanding of the quote that we've received from the provider, Guardian Ecology. So a little bit of the history is last year, this year actually, 2024, the budget is for this project was $6,330. It was entirely paid for by the Alma subunit, and essentially all of the work was in the Alma subunit, except for, so you could say at the goodwill of the provider and the goodwill of the residents of Alma. The provider also did, at the end of the season, a survey of other parts of Fundy Albert in order to prepare a new proposal. So the new proposal that we did receive, that was in our budget package, actually shows two different, how does he refer to them as?
Options.
Options.
Scenario 1,
Okay.
Scenario 2.
And this, I think, has been misunderstood by the budget prep people, because the first option, which has gone from, is 25,000, and the way I read it, it says it's only for Alma. So it would, what the option is going from a 2024 expense of 6,330 to 25,000 just for Alma. But that's actually not how it appears in the budget template. It appears as though that number is shared by the 3 municipalities, but in fact the proposal is just for Alma. So I think there's and I previously submitted that concern. There's a disconnect, and why the big increase in cost is, it's explained a little bit in the proposal from Guardian Ecology, because it's almost like 4 times the price. The proposal includes a second option, which is the all of Fundy Albert option, and you can see that it's quite expensive.
Something around
44,055 minimum and 74,605 ideal.
Yeah. So I think this one, I think we need to kind of go back to the drawing board here a little bit, because the budget proposal document didn't get the allocation right. So there isn't a proposal here right now for just the 3 municipalities. It's either Alma or all. In terms of, is it working? Like, I think the experience in Alma is that it does do something, but the rhizomes, as you know, Keith, who's the provider, has told us before, they're very aggressive plants and very determined plants. So I do, some of the comments from the mayor and other councillors, I tend to agree with as well. I think this one, we may need to kind of put an asterisk here. It's a bunch of money. And when we get to the bottom line and see how we're doing and trying to cut costs, then we, in the meantime, I don't know what to do right now, because the way it's proposed in the spreadsheet is incorrect.
Well, how we put it in the spreadsheet was to give us the funds as an administration to go back and re-look at a different proposal with Guardian Ecology, because when we looked at the 74,000, we thought it was really high considering all our other costs
Right.
that are uncontrollable this year, and this one was one we could control. So I think our goal was to.
But that's not
Work
what he
with
was
them.
offering. The 25, it was only for the one community.
I think what the suggestion is, Deputy Mayor, is for the municipality to go back to the contractor and say, change this to reflect public education, so that I think there would be a benefit for public education throughout the municipality. There's knotweed everywhere, as was presented in the
Yeah.
report. And we do have public works employees who would benefit from knowing the result of, knowing the impacts of knotweed, so that when they're doing their work within either a former municipality, well, really within one of the 3 former municipalities, they have a sense of what to do and what not to do to make a bad situation already worse. Yes?
Thank you, Mayor. We currently have an employee who is able to do work with knotweed, and we can expand on that skill set in-house, but I think, to the Mayor's point, the public is maybe where we need to be focusing some attention on.
Yeah. That's
And I-
the,
And I don't think $25,000 is needed for that one only task. But I'd like to go back and see what, I mean, I don't think I have enough information to jump from 63 to 25,000 right now.
well, I mean, it's either a case where we say we're prepared to allocate this much and see what he can do with that amount, or we ask him for a revised quote, which he may or may not be able to provide us by budget time.
Or we allocate it the way the proposal is to Alma, which is the way the proposal's written.
Right, that is an option, yeah.
But we could
But
change
then
that
if it's
number.
allocated, yeah, we can change the allocation prior to budget time based on that, but, yeah.
Mayor Arrow, what's your,
Well,
oh, Mayor.
as my, I told you, what I think we should do is we need to just sort of highlight this as, I would like to get to the end result to see how we're doing before we,
Yeah.
this one is kind of got all sorts of problems to it right now.
So we'll leave it there for now.
You can do, I guess, yeah. Leave it there, but
For
for
clar-
me, it's all asterisks.
To clarify then, when we go back after we get through this, you want us to then allocate that, a dollar amount to Alma
Alma
only
only.
for the sake of then revisiting the budget after? Would that be a first step, is what you're suggesting? And then see what the number does to?
Yeah, but for the 25,000 for Alma only seemed, like, that's gone from 6,000, whatever, I think I said 6,300 to 25.
Yeah.
I don't think I would advocate that. I would advocate that we would put in 6,000 and let's go back and have a discussion with the provider about.
Well, since
6,000
Alma is the
Alma
only
only?
one, we're Alma only, and then we'll come back and revisit.
Yeah,
So you're happy putting the 6 in for Alma then, John?
yeah, well, let's leave it as last
And then
year and
we'll
see what happens.
look at what that does.
All right.
Thank you.
So moving on, where was I here?
Community
Yep,
development.
community development, SCRSC, again, that's all part of the 2.81% decrease in Southeast Regional Service Commission costs. Economic development is, that is the 79,000 is,
Nope.
whoop, just be mindful that that is personnel costs.
Yeah.
No, it's the one before I'd like to comment.
With,
The community development?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify so people understand how my brain works on this. So this is another expenditure from the municipality to the RSC 7. This time, instead of for planning, this is for community development. This expenditure, I am okay to apply the inside-outside rate. As opposed to some of the other ones where I was saying, no, we should have this equally shared. This one I'm okay because there is sort of more community development in the core areas, the former villages. There's more stuff like this in there. So I'm okay with this one, but just so people understand how I'm thinking at least on
So
the
you,
difference.
so you're well, I think it's shown here, shared
Yes.
equally by.
No, it's
no, it's shared
not.
with the 90.
It's shared with the inside-outside
90-10.
rate, and
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
I'm not so sure I would agree, Deputy Mayor, because community development is not community development in the traditional sense of developing in the community. It's rather community development and social inclusion, which are more the homelessness issues and so on. That's where I would see that would be shared across the board. The definition of community development by the Southeast Regional Service Commission is important in this context, and it's not to see development within one of the three former villages. It's all about community development and social inclusion, the mandated service by the Southeast Regional Service Commission.
But are you then saying that you would prefer to see this equally shared?
Yes,
Okay.
with the 90-10 inside outside.
No, but that's not equally shared.
Yeah, oh, okay, yeah, sorry, would be equally shared based on population on tax base.
Yeah, I would not support that.
Yeah, so remember, anything in the shared column here, as we tentatively decided on our first budget deliberation day, is gonna have the inside-outside rate applied to it.
Right. What I would caution council is to be aware that this is not development in a community.
Yeah.
This is rather
Paying
social
ours.
development and social inclusion and community development. It's more targeted really at costs associated with community development and social inclusion in the broader context. It's not about increasing the development in a community. So you need
No,
to go
but-
back to the actual mandated service.
Yeah,
And
but
determine
the
what
fact
that-
is this is money leaving the community, leaving Fundy Albert to go to the service commission.
Paying our share of the Southeast
Yeah.
Regional Service Commission's
Exactly,
costs.
yeah.
And so I would tend to agree with you that, you know, the more appropriate way would be a shared cost, but equally. I think that's what you're suggesting.
No, it's not.
It should, the way that our treasurer has it is the way that
It should be.
it should be.
Which means the inside-outside rate would be applied to this amount.
I thought you were arguing against that a second ago.
No,
No?
To another service.
no.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fine. Thank you. Economic development, so that again would be a matter for discussion in closed session because of the nature of the expenditure. The next one is Tourist Bureau, 24,485 from 20,186, and I think that's the operation of our tourist information centers. So I don't know if there's anything to add to that.
I do not have anything to add on my notes.
So, just for clarification, we have two visitor information centers, one in Hillsborough and one in Alma.
Correct. The one in Alma is a joint project that we're doing with Friends of Fundy, so it's a little bit different than the one in Hillsborough.
But it still has a cost.
Yes.
We do still
We do
share.
Yeah.
share in some salary, yeah.
Have we got any quote for the mini split, or do we know what that is, the cost that would be?
That's based on the other mini split purchases we've made this year.
And some of the student employment salaries would be given back, or we would be able to get that back through a grant, I assume?
Yeah, that's budgeted with one of them being half covered by.
Just one of them?
Yes.
So it could be a little high there if we get more student grants, correct?
Could be, the cost could be lower, yes,
Yeah.
if we have more
Our budget
grants.
could be a little bit high though. The number in here, it could be high if we
Oh.
get more students, right? Because that will cut the budget down.
Yes,
Okay.
It depends because the SEED program and the Canada Jobs programs are for a variety of positions that we have in the municipality, including the pool, including public works, and including the tourist information center. So it might not be correct just to say, well, it could be a lot lower. It might,
No, I
it
understand.
might, it might not. Yeah.
If I could add to that, sometimes it also depends on the applicants as well. So some of the restrictions on some of those grants are age, or whether they're going into full-time education and things of that nature. So if we don't have the ideal applicant that meets with that grant, then sometimes we need to hire the person. We don't have always too much choices.
Okay. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Arrow?
Yeah, I do have questions about this. So, this amount, if I understand correctly, this is including amounts to actually maintain the facility, the building
yes,
in Hillsborough,
correct.
and it includes human resources,
Yes,
and it includes, well, I saw on the list of our human resources, there's 2 positions listed for the VIC, 2 summer positions.
correct.
But my understanding are we involved in 3 positions or 2 positions? Like, is it seemed like there were 2 positions in Hillsborough and 1 position in Alma that we were contributing to in 2024. Is that correct?
It is correct. I believe one of the ones in Hillsborough was back and forth between the pool and the visitors information, because we can't have one person work 7 days a week. So there was a bit of crossover.
So in this budget proposal that we see here, where are the human resources component of this being allocated?
Salary dollars, are you asking?
Yes.
Okay. The salary dollars are
For the VICR.
in here.
And then,
Yes, but I'm saying where are they, the proposal, where are they imagining those salary dollars are being deployed? In other words, put it a different way. Is the contribution that the Fundy Albert made to help staff the VIC in Alma in 2024, is that the same deal included here for
Yes.
2025?
Yes, it includes. The goal is to have 2 students to fill those positions.
That's not
Sorry,
really-
Jillian. So the summer student employment here, the question is the salary dollars for that. Is that what you're asking? The summer student employment dollars are sitting in here as a salary? Is that what you're asking?
No, what I'm asking is this, in 2024, this year, Fundy Albert, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Fundy Albert contributed a bunch of salary dollars to staff a VIC position in Alma
Correct.
as part of the Friends of Fundy partnership.
Correct.
Does this proposal include the same
The same
thing
for 25.
2025?
Yes, it does.
Technically, this one has the same goal, is that we want to have 2 students fulfill the positions. The problem was in Alma that we made agreements with Friends of Fun Day to help them pay for a staff member because we could not find a student to fulfill that position.
Are we in discussions with Friends of Fundy already for 2025? Like, are they part of this proposed submission, which is really tourist information centers for Fundy Albert, which currently we had 2?
We are still in, we haven't nailed down all the details of it, but we were going to continue to do that service with Friends of Fundy in 2025.
Okay, as part of this?
Yep.
Okay, very good. All right.
So we're ready to move on to the next one? Or did you have a question,
No, I'm
Counselor?
good.
All right. Tourist camps, parks, etc. I assume these are recreational parks?
These are all our tourist parks. So this would include McLennan Park, Crooked Creek Lookout Park and Trail, and Alma Waterfront Park.
And if I
Yes.
could add, so many of our key attractions are showing their age and require significant repair or replacement. While there may be cheaper solutions, we must opt for more enduring and sustainable solutions. For example, the gazebo in the Alma Waterfront Park is in need of replacements before it becomes unsafe. So while there are cheaper options for that one, as an example, prepackaged metal gazebos, which nobody really would like to see, they don't live up to the expectations of both the residents or the visitors of Alma. Or we could opt to use treated lumber from a local source or build it ourselves. However, the 2 key risks identified are liability, so untrained workers building public structure that would leave Fundy Albert open to legal proceedings if a member of the public was hurt, or the use of untreated lumber would result in a shorter life expectancy of the structure and increased maintenance costs. So we're using that as an example of, everybody thinks we can just throw a gazebo out for $10,000, but when you start looking into it, that's not always the best option or the most cost effective in the long run. So this section, although we see a bit of an increase, it's really kind of to manage some of those things and start building things that are lasting.
So if I'm not correct, this gazebo, which I feel we've talked about ever since we became a council, Fundy Albert, this gazebo, the money is being set aside.
From 24 to go into 25.
So that's not in this budget line.
There is a
A
portion.
little
in
bit of
this.
it. We didn't have enough in 24 in the budget I think there was only $12,000, I
Yeah,
remember.
$12,000, and Ian one contractor told Ian
40
40
to do
50.
the gazebo. So this is why the gazebo in Alma hasn't been done yet. But so yes, it is. There are cheap options that we could put a gazebo in. But then if we have to replace and repair that gazebo every 5-10 years, then that's not the best option that we're looking for. So that money from 2024 is put into 2025, so we can build a pool of money that can get us what we need in order to fix that gazebo. And that's just one example in that category.
Correct. So do you have a plan of how you came up with this dollar amount? Like what, you came up with an increased dollar amount to fix these things, and one of them is the gazebo, obviously, but what are the other items that brought you to this number?
So that also would include like our regular insurance costs, some repairs needed to the outhouses to make it more maintenance easy, because on the inside it's all plywood. The guys wanted to put some inside plastic or change the outlook of them altogether, so when there is things on the walls, the guys can pressure wash them off. And
That's in the look up in the Riverside-Albert here, yeah.
Yeah.
and it's also to replace some of our roofs on our picnic shelters. So in Riverside-Albert, there's one on the bottom road trail, and there's one up at the entrance to Crooked Creek Trail, and also to put in new garbage bins, benches, picnic tables where needed, and also for power to Hillsborough Peace Park.
Is this not something?
Just, Councillor, somebody else who wanted to have a question. Were you done, Councillor Eldricken?
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Ward Russell?
Sir, I understand that this is what our wants are, but have we scheduled, like we know, like have we set a party? Because I mean, again, we can't do it all in 1 year. So are we setting a party that we're gonna do the gazebo in 2025 and then the plan for 2026? I think that's what you need. I think it's great to have, you know, a whole bunch of wants, but really what can we actually achieve? And that would be based on that number. So I'd like to probably see that instead of just listing, you know, 10 different things that we'd like to get done, because realistically we know we can't get that done. And also the other quick question is trail maintenance and insurance. What is that? I assume that is Kodiak?
Kodiak Second Trails?
In this section, no.
No.
So it is trail maintenance and insurance. And
Trail maintenance and insurance, so that would be for Crooked Creek Trail.
Is there a dollar amount for that insurance on that?
It would be, well, it's kind of a shared, so it's $219 for the three
It's small
cars.
version.
Again, all of our assets are under our insurance umbrella, so there's no real dollar amount that can be doled out for specifics.
It's an apportionment of costs.
That's
But are we really apportioning? Like, there's a line item called liability insurance.
But there's different insurance, like other parts of our insurance policy
Okay,
that
that's-
cover our parks.
Okay.
Yeah, because like they're listed as picnic shelters, gazebos under our insurance.
Just a second. Councillor Land?
If I may, we were talking about structures and building gazebos and outhouses and all that kind of stuff. We have a downtime in wintertime. Like an outhouse, you can build anywhere, so you move it in. Instead of doing all this work at once in the summertime, you only have 3 or 4 months, and the scale of work increases through the summer, right? Just maybe some planning going forward of some of the stuff that we could have in the bench and stuff like that, so it's springtime, walk it up, there it is. Just throwing some stuff out there. It's the same gazebos, they built that one in Hillsborough, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, and some of it was built pre the area. They did something down the shop, then he brought it up and put it all together. So,
To the point that, and I know Deputy Mayor Arrow wants to say something, to the point that Councillor Ward Russell brought up, what is asked is it reasonable to be able to do these things within a calendar year? And if we're talking about repairing a gazebo and repairing the facility at the top of the Crooked Creek Trail, those are quite easily achievable, I would think. So I don't think it's a question of not being able to do one. Yes, go ahead.
So just a couple of points on those. So getting quotes is very difficult. I mean, it costs a company money to provide quotes. So to go out and ask for quotes all over the place just so we have information to put in a budget that we may or may not ever go back to them and say, yes, do this. is asking a lot of companies. It's their time. It costs them money to provide quotes. So we kind of go out and try to get whatever we can for ideas on what these are going to cost. General, they're not exact. Until we know that we want to put that project in place or that we have approval in the budget to move forward on some of these things. So we're trying to get an idea of what it would cost if we were going to do this so that we can make decisions around this table. We can't get exact quotes from all of this stuff until we know that we're going to do the project and have a proper written scope of work for whatever projects we want to do. As far as when things are going to be built, that's definitely a work plan thing. And yes, those are all great ideas that our Director of Operations will take into consideration. And then to Councillor Ward Russell's point on, oh my goodness, I've lost what it was. I'm very sorry.
Doable, the projects being doable.
Oh, the wants versus the needs. Yeah. These are projects that have been sitting on the books for a very long time. They're the ones that we get pressure from council as well as from public on when are these going to get done. So these aren't new projects that we're coming up with. These are ones that we keep getting pressure on when they're going to be completed.
And I would add that the washrooms at Crooked Creek are the only public washrooms in the Riverside-Albert area for
So
any
I'm-
trail and,
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you're supportive of what's being asked, Councillor Elderkin?
yes.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Arrow?
Yeah. Two things. The first one is, why wouldn't you, and it's still an if, but if we're going to be supporting White Rock trail maintenance, why isn't that here?
It was always in the past, and it's been in parks and playgrounds. And that's where I've left it, just as, because the trail and the park are all in the vicinity in Hillsborough, and that's where I've left them.
Parks and playgrounds, that's coming, I guess, is
It
that
is.
right?
Yeah.
It's further down.
It's under Recreation and Culture Services.
Okay.
Right.
So the last question on this one is, and I maybe should have talked about it earlier when we were in garbage collection, but I think most of the council members know that I've been advocating, and members of the community, especially in the Harvey LSD area, but much wider than that, have been advocating that isn't there something that we can do as a municipality to pick up garbage at Dennis Beach or in the vicinity of Dennis Beach, even though we know that Dennis Beach is not physically owned by the municipality, in much the same way, actually, that the Alma Waterfront Park is not physically owned by the municipality, but we help maintain it and we take care of it, and we're happy to do that. Dennis Beach, we've never done anything before, but this year, we ended up making it into the national news, Dennis Beach and Waterside Beach, in part because of its link to garbage. And we do have these LSD areas that never were really getting anything from a local government because they never had a local government. So we have people like in the Harvey LSD who now are members of our community, in much the same way that Lower Coverdale and Hillsborough LSDs, they wonder what are they getting for being part of the community. They know their tax rates are going up and their taxes are going up, and they're going, what are we getting? We know they pay for us, and they know they got access to the rink that they always did, and so on. They're asking for this, which I think is a small expense. It must be. This is only a summer thing, several times a week. I'm not sure who would actually physically pick up the garbage, whether it would be Miller as they drive by, or whether it would our people as they drive by and bring it somewhere. But I personally am a proponent that the budget, whatever the number is, it is including. We make the commitment to say, because I was figuring it, it's how many hours a week is it? I figured, ran some quick numbers. I figured maximum it's probably $1,000 of our people time to pick up the garbage and get it to a place where we're already dealing with garbage, because it's so close to being off the road. So I personally would like to see this as part of the work plan and say that we've funded it.
And that would be a decision of council, Deputy Mayor, and if council wishes to do that, they can do it, recognizing the impacts, if there are any, on Public Works staff. I would point out that the province of New Brunswick has already come out and asked why we weren't picking up garbage at Dennis Beach, and I said, it's your property, it's not ours, right? But I'm not arguing the pros of doing that and the benefits, the larger benefits of doing that. I'm just suggesting that it is not our property. To ask Miller Waste to do it, that would be an addendum to their contract, and it would be additional costs. So
That's what I'm saying.
but that would not be in the cards unless it was a separate contract just to do that.
Okay. So what I'm doing, I'm throwing out to my fellow councillors that I personally would like to see us endorse this, or at least a serious investigation, because have not done that, thinking that if it's between $1,000 and $2,000 for the summer to do this, at least on let's do a trial basis and see if it works. I'm asking you to support me in supporting our community to try this.
And that would be in the form of a council resolutions during regular council
Well,
meeting,
no.
not during budget deliberations. No. Unless you want to add something to the budget
That's
for
what
it.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
Or I want it to be clear that this includes that. If it doesn't, let's bump it up $2,000 and include it.
Yes, Councillor Ward
Not
Russell.
to disagree with you, Councillor Arrow, but there is other areas within LSDs that do have parks that would require the same. So this
Throw it
would
out.
be an
I'm
opportunity
throwing out
to do
the one
that.
I know about.
We're now starting to get into an area where we're asking our Public Works employees to do things that they typically don't do in their regular day. And we already know that they're being asked to do things that they're not achieving, and they're being
Okay.
questioned about it, so.
So maybe we could look into having a contract, look into how much it would cost us to contract somebody to pick up garbage in multiple areas.
But this is a budget deliberation here. This is about whether we're committing to putting in the budget. It's an indication of will. That's what I'm asking that let's use this as an indication of will to do it.
Councillor Jonah.
Not knowing the Dennis Beach area, I'm ashamed to say that, but I don't. But when you're talking our public employees going in, pick up garbage at Dennis Beach, is there a garbage can, or are we expecting them to walk the beach and start plucking
No.
garbage?
So it's, first off, we're not expecting them to go on a beach at all.
Okay.
This is basically roadside,
Yeah.
okay? But there is no garbage can. That's part of the problem. So we would presumably put the garbage can there with a sign and pick it up periodically.
Hope for the best.
And hope for the best and see if it happens. This is what the community is asking for.
Just want to better understand what.
Yeah, that's
Thank
it.
you.
Okay. So, going back to this initial thing here, we've got a request for $32,856 in the budget. And there's been the suggestion that it should be brought down, there's a suggestion it should go up. Yes?
Just for clarification, so the cost, Councillor Era, that you were anticipating, was that just for the garbage can and signage? And then we need to figure out on the public works side what that would mean in time, in terms of their work schedule and adding that to the work plan? Because like a garbage can that is windproof and animal proof and signage and stuff would maybe be more than $1,000.
Yeah, we
as
know
well,
that
right?
because it's of the ones previous work that we did when we got the garbage cans in Alma, which are, you need a garbage can more like that you see in Fundy National Park,
Right.
right, which are 1,000 or more.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is you see, part of how, you've heard the questions that came up actually in this discussion about this particular item of the 32,856. It's not actually clear what the 32,856 includes specifically, right? So what I'm saying is either we indicate in the general narrative that you have for this that garbage collection at Dennis Beach at least is a hoped for. We already know last year there were many things that were in the budget that never actually got done, okay? But we're hoping to do it. And you guys go back as the administration and try and figure out what you can do, because that's what you're doing with many of these rows. Or if you're saying, no, that definitely doesn't include Dennis Beach garbage, I would say, I'm advocating, let's bump that up, 2,000 or 3,000. Exactly, is it a Miller contract amendment? Is it our own staff? What is it? I don't know. That's what you guys do.
Although, sorry.
Councillor Elderkin.
I do appreciate what you're saying, and I as well, being here and knowing the area, it is a need. But a little bit for me, our public works aren't really performing the services that we currently have. So for me to support this, I think one, it's probably gonna open a can of worms, because there's all kinds of other areas in Fundy Albert that are gonna request the same service. And I'm not disagreeing, we need garbage down there. I'm not disagreeing, but I think I'd have to have more details as to exactly how this is unfolding, because I don't think $2,000 is gonna cover it. I don't. And I'm in support of it, and I feel their needs, but I think at some point, we need to push back to the provincial government and say, ante up here a little bit. We have a need, it's their property. So you're gonna get into Cape and Range, they're all there's not just Waterside and Dennis's Beach. There's 2 beaches
Right.
in Cape and Range that are public, that have no garbage cans.
The difference is that Dennis Beach has been a pinch point as a starter, and it's so close to the main road, to 114.
Mm-hmm.
So we can do studies, or we can go to the provincial government, but in the end, what it'll mean is at the end of today and the end of this budget deliberation process, we will actually have achieved no new development in this area. We have an opportunity now to do it, otherwise it's just kicking it down the road. Maybe we'll achieve better things, but it's an indication of how effective we are as a council in implementing new things that are probably pretty cheap that the community's asking for.
All right, so the points have been taken, the points have been made. Councillor Ward Russell, I believe you had a comment, and Councillor Coates.
Okay, so do I understand that, is there a surplus left over in this line item of roughly $20,000?
That's the gazebo that they're putting money
So
aside.
so that you are putting $20,000 from this budget?
From last year.
It is 12, I thought it was 12, but now you're saying 20?
12 was the original budget that we had.
Right,
That
but
was
there
the
is
12,000 was the gazebo budget, the Alma plants, and
Okay, so there is 20 left over, so you are taking that full 20 and putting it into the gazebo.
Along with what we budgeted for this year.
Correct.
Yeah.
Listen, I respect, and I think sometimes you have to go out of your comfort zone and do things for all of Fundy Albert, and this would definitely one that I would support. But I do caution that it will open a can of worms, because I will be requesting that the same services be given to the parking lot program.
Okay, just hold on. Councillor Coates.
Seen many of these garbage boxes in many places, and it's just a place for, you see more black bags type, and it's all over. So we're gonna open a real can of worms to do that. I know, for instance, I don't know if it's just mine, but in general, it's a disgrace. The people around there clean it up once or twice a year, but you drive in there a day after they've cleaned it up and there's garbage. People will drop that stuff all over the place, and we're just opening a big can of worms by putting that. It's the province that should be picking it up, not us.
All right. Thank you very much. I believe our treasurer has one final comment, then we're going to move on.
It was just my comment was if this is something council wants to see, maybe put in a request and the administration can complete a survey next year.
All right.
And then determine the costs that would be associated.
So there being no consensus on what Councillor Arrow or Deputy Mayor Arrow is suggesting, we're going to move on, leave it at 856. There was really no consensus, so anyway. Moving on to recreation and culture services, recreation other, which are community activities And there is an increase requested from 5,000 to 15,000. Well, maybe ask our CAO to see if she has any comments before looking for comments.
I do not, but our treasurer may have.
I just a note Bob has mentioned earlier, there's 2 lines that were omitted here.
Oh,
Yeah.
Motion.
so go ahead.
So for the first one is promotion of tourism. The amount is for $16,731, and this was for a second entrance sign for the Funday Park entrance into Funday Albert.
And that's all that was in there?
Yes.
Okay, so $16,000 for a sign. Is anyone opposed to that? It's part of the branding. Deputy Mayor,
Well, is
that
this-
particular one.
Is this, like, we did, the branding started with an amount given to us or provided to us by the province,
Correct.
right? Is this on, like that, I thought that money was all spent.
Yes.
Yes.
It is, so
Yeah.
this is,
Branding is going to be continual, so
yeah, so my view is we should asterisk this now. I'm not sure we can afford it this year. This is just for one sign. This is it under, I would put nice to have, not need to have. I'm not against the sign, but if we're get to the bottom here, at the end of the day, and we're looking now at tax rates, this is one that if we're gonna leave it in now, we need to, or I'll certainly be marking this with a big asterisk that if we need to cut to get to where we need to be for us to have a budget that we're prepared to approve, this might be a good target.
Yes, Councillor Ward Russell.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I also would suggest that, you know, I understand that the province is still sitting on, some transition funding. You know, this might be, you know, we should be actually, as we're going through this process, you know, we should start it on Tuesday, but as we continue today, is make that wish list of what we want to be asking the province for.
Mm-hmm.
There is money there, and we need to, you know, make sure that our list is, so I guess my point is I would like to see this leave our budget and go on a wish list to ask the province for funding.
Okay, anyone else?
Just
Councillor
concur.
Jonah?
Yeah, I concur with Deputy Mayor Arrow. Nice to have, be lovely to have it, but we're looking at cutting. 16,000 is the starting point, so I
All right.
totally support Councillor
All right,
saying.
so 0. Is there another one?
The second one that was omitted was the contribution to tourism through the Service Commission of $1,129.
And that again, that's a
Fixed cost.
fixed cost.
Can I ask one question?
Yes,
On the documentation that came in, it says there it's $2,359.
this might be a disconnect between me doing the report and Jillian having numbers, so we'll double check that one.
yep. All right. So now we get to recreation, other community activities. So there's an increase there of $10,000 from last year. Maybe if our treasurer can provide a bit of context.
So
I can start on that one if while she's
Okay.
Yep.
looking. So
Yeah.
this is basically funds that we look at, that we promote within the community. So February Frolic, Canada Day, the Christmas Parade, Municipality Week, things of that nature.
So it's not grants and contributions, but rather
No.
community
Community
events
approach to
that
community,
we've
yeah.
sponsored that.
That we facilitate.
Yeah, we facilitate those.
So, just a couple questions for me. Canada Day, which I'm assuming is gonna become a conversation at some point, so we might as well put it on the table. We had talked in the past that we can't continue to afford to support 2 Canada Day events. So your budget proposal here, I believe it was $6,600 for Canada Day.
Yeah.
Where's that been allocated to?
So our goal for Canada Day is to look at something that has events happening in all of Fundy, Albert. It could be, you know, go ATVing on one of our trails, or go to Alma to watch the fireworks, or so whether we promote it and include and partner with all of the other events that are going on. We haven't quite nailed down what we're going to do with it, but it's really so that we as a municipality can have things going on in all of the wards, and people can then join into whichever activity they want.
So will we still be applying for, I think it's the Heritage?
We
Canada?
can only apply for one, we were
Correct.
told last year, yeah. So we will still apply for that. But that money traditionally has gone to Hillsborough and Alma for some of their activities. So we'll have to revisit all of that.
And I think the Christmas parade in Hillsborough, there was a budget line for $1,400.
Mhm.
Is that what it cost for us to participate in the Christmas parade?
So as it is right now, I believe we do the float, one of the floats, and the float requires some work. I haven't been here in the past. I believe is it the Santa sleigh? Yeah. So that's maybe a discussion we can have when we get down to that. But as we know it now, that there would be some work that I believe needs to be done on that float for that event, and yeah.
I believe there's also a stipend for the band.
The band,
that comes
correct.
in,
There's that
which is
comes out of that
included
one.
in the Christmas
Mhm.
parade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
This is I appreciate that because that's new information that we,
It was new to me too.
Yeah, because-
I did not know we did the Santa Claus float for Santa's sleigh. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Councillor Jonah.
So I just want to get the candidate for a second. You mentioned fireworks. Are you proposing one fireworks for the community and move it around each year?
So we're not proposing anything at this point. We haven't really kind of put pen to paper on anything just yet. So it is something we have said in 2024 that we would revisit, and this is our that we will be revisiting it.
Councillor Ward Russell.
Yeah, I think I did talk with regards to the grants and contributions, and I do like that there should be a max amount that we actually contribute to these. If it's not grants, it is community activities as well. So I do find there is a very large range from 500 to 6,600. I mean, I think that there should be a cap of the max of that we should be contributing. Yeah, I find that total is a lot. I also think that if we look at the Christmas parade itself, there might be another float that we could, there should be some mutual relationship between another village that there could be something there that we could use. I just find there is a lot of money there that I would not agree with.
So are you proposing reducing it?
I
If so,
would like to
by
see-
how much?
If we're not 100% sure on the candidate right now, and I'm not really sure what the summer concert series are all about, I think you could lower that to about $7,500.
Okay, if that's what council wants, then that's what'll go in the budget, and then we can work around that or work with that, and then there's just fewer activities. Yes?
Well, that was going to be my point, that there's going to be fewer activities then. I mean, I know that the Christmas light contest, like that's for prizes for families and home, like there's that do the Christmas lights, and these are all community events, and we really need to have a budget to be doing community events. Not all of the events that go on are done, a lot of them are done by volunteers and organizations and individuals within our communities, but we need to have some skin in the game as well, and have some funds set aside to be doing some of these things. So the summer concert series, as an example, was started this summer in Peace Park here in Hillsborough. I know that there's Friends of Fundy does something in Alma. We're looking at seeing if we can maybe come up with a plan to do something in Riverside-Albert. It'd be part of a tourism thing, a part of a community thing, part of a seniors thing. It kind of touches in on a lot of stuff. We can partner with a lot of people on it, but we can't be doing things like that if we don't have funds to do it with. And strategic partnerships are great, but we can't come to the table with saying we can do in kind, which we can. We do have to sometimes have some funds available to help out and do our part in the bigger picture.
So Deputy Mayor Arrow, I suspect you agree with Councillor Ward Russell to reduce
I
it to
actually do.
7,500?
I actually do
Oh,
for this year.
Okay, all right.
So, but I'd like to just add a few things.
Well,
like,
let's, Councillor Jonah had his hand up first. Thank you.
I respectfully disagree with you. I don't believe 15 is enough for an entire community. So to cut it in half as a starting point for administration, I completely disagree with that.
Okay, are there others who disagree with cutting it in half? Councillor Land?
I'd put it drop it to 10 rather than 75. It's not a lot more, but a little bit more, but it's still a reduction.
Yep.
So it works with both sides of the thing, I guess. But it takes a lot of money to do stuff. It is what it is,
Yep.
but it's one of these things I think that the communities need in each one. So
Councillor Alderkin, what are your thoughts? I will come back to you, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I do agree that it is important, absolutely, and I'm not sure. I would agree with dropping it a little bit, because I think it's been increased by $10,000 from last year, correct? Last year, the budget was 5,000,
5,000.
so we've increased it by $10,000, which is a huge jump, and you know, the concert series alone is budgeted for $4,000, and Canada Day, so there's your $10,000, your increase, so, I would agree to probably drop it down by $5,000.
Okay, so there's two for $5,000 counts. Deputy Mayor Arrow.
Yeah, so I just to echo what Councillor Ellican just said, it's not really a reduction we're talking about. It's this year is 5,000. It's already, we're talking about either increasing it between 50%, 100%, or 300%. Like, just a reality check here. The summer concert series last year was zero. There was no money provided by this municipality to the concert series, to my knowledge. I believe that all the concerts that were taking place in Hillsborough and Alma were through grants from partnering with other organizations. Just, am I wrong there?
Yes, not to
No,
be
but-
mean, Councillor Arrow, but, the ones in Hillsborough, we contributed $1,500. We had
From
also-
this budget.
From this budget. We had received grant funding, through RDC. That one's not always guaranteed. That is why we put in the full cost of the summer concert series.
Okay.
So I would advocate no more than 10,000. I
All right.
still think we'd go with 75.
Councillor Coates, thoughts before we move on?
No, I would agree with the 10,000.
All right, so
Just a quick question. I thought we voted against any money for the summer concerts in 2024. I believe we did.
The concert, that came through a summer grants, the grants and contributions program that was denied by council. And then our director of operations worked with the organization that wanted to put it on to get the RDC, sorry, did I say, community services? And they were able to get an RDC grant in order to put that in place. So I misspoke. It did not, that money did not come out of this budget.
Just,
A
there was
small portion of it, yeah. So the director of we have a position that's the director of community service, and that position's job is to help put on events throughout the municipality. So if we don't want to put on events throughout the municipality, we would maybe want to revisit whether we have a position dedicated to doing that.
all right.
They need to have a budget, just like the finance department needs a budget, like director of operations needs a budget. We need some budgets to be able to work on some things.
Yeah, I'm just gonna add that I think that a lot of that person's responsibility is also working with the other community organizations within the municipality as well. So I think,
Correct.
and I don't wanna see any duplication. I think we have a lot of great organizations that work on the same idea, so I think there should be more, trying to collaborate with those. That's where I would see that interest going.
Thank you. So it'll be reduced to $10,000. Community centers and halls. So it's a budget reduction from 69,838 to 59,469. So I assume that's for the maintenance and upkeeps and operations for the community halls and centers?
Yes, that'd be for the Alma Activity Center and Riverside-Albert Rec Center. I did cut some of their contingency out in hopes to find some savings. That is the only reason it's lower.
My comment on that would be careful, because if you don't invest in these buildings, they will start to deteriorate and they will cost us they will cost us more in the short term. Councillor Ward Russell.
Just curious of what your plan is with them. Like, is it just the operating maintenance on them, or is there actually any
Renovations?
renovations?
There's no renovation, that was just,
General upkeep.
yeah, and it left with $7,500 for each building for contingency for repairs.
As
Yes.
an example, in this room alone, there's a broken window and a broken divider at the back. So
Yeah.
these things cost money to upkeep and fix and maintain.
Yeah.
I would add that I don't think this is the place to cut. I do agree with what Mayor Rochon said, that I understand we did lower it to find savings, but I agree, this building is used a lot and it needs to be maintained. As, you know, heat, as we sit here today, is just one of the things that need to be maintained. And, you know, if we don't start paying attention to them, we're gonna have more issues. But this doesn't include anything for the multicultural center in Alma, just the
activity center,
activity center.
And the
So where
incubator
does the
spaces.
multicultural center fall under?
under cultural buildings.
Okay.
Okay. And the same would apply at the activity center. There are needs for renovations. I mean, the building is aging, the building is old, and if we're not careful, we're gonna find ourselves having to replace something fairly significant, so.
And we also have to be mindful of, what the needs are in the communities. You know, if, it's very easy to say we all need upgrades, but how many buildings can we continue to maintain long-term? Because we can't continue it. Let's be real. We just can't.
Right. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, so last year, there's a line item just above this line item, which is community centers and halls personnel. This is other, so this is the facility here. Last year for personnel, there was a number for $35,500. And the annotation in the comments column was essentially custodial services. This year that line item is empty, zero. So maybe I missed something earlier in the explanation in the budget document, but what's going on here that we had a line item for $35,000 for personnel last year and this year it's zero? What happened?
So our CAO actually had made some changes to the public works schedule, and we were able to allocate that money elsewhere instead of hiring a separate staff it.
As if you recall, in
The washrooms.
2023, there was actually someone who was hired to do some custodial work in the community of Alma. I believe there was a budget allotment for that in 2024 that council had approved, and that they opted to do it through the public works staff. So that's likely why it's not in
So we
budget
changed the
this year.
schedule of the public works staff. In the summer, they worked from Wednesday to Sunday. No, I can't remember now what it was. Anyway, we did have staff on the weekends, so we were able to use public works staff where we weren't able to before.
So which line item is that come under then? Those dollars for our staff for doing custodial services in the community centers, which line item is that now?
I'll address it in our closed session. I have an explanation, but it's regarding personnel, and I can explain it to you.
But can't you just say which line item it is?
It's a mixture of two.
And it's shared.
One is shared and one is not.
Okay, I'll wait.
Councillor Jonah.
I believe regarding that $35,000 that was put in there in 2023, I think there's merit, not this year because we're trying to cut, but I can foresee that being a position that we're going to need down the road. There's enough going on in the Alma Rec Center and the Rec Center here that maybe if we had somebody dedicated that, when you need this done to bring Alma up to stuff, you got this going on in this building, to have public works, a guy rolling in that just got done shoveling dirt, to go in and try to realize what needs to be done at a rec center to bring it up to snuff, I can really see that being a position that we need to look at. Not this year, but next year. We'll see how this year goes, because there seems to be grumbling of both communities that the rec centers are not being kept up to snuff, not being clean. I think there's merit to looking at a position to hire somebody that's what they do. Keep our two rec centers and the cultural center as well. Up to snuff, clean, make sure toilet paper's in place. That sounds like a job to me.
That's fine. Thank you. Anyone else? No?
Excuse me,
Yes?
wondering if it's possible we could take a 5-minute break?
So people can warm up in their cars.
All right, everyone in favor of a 15-minute recess?
I
5 minutes? So we'll recess for, I'll cut the difference, 10 minutes.
I may have a blanket in my car.
Oh, I thought,
All right, folks, we'll resume deliberations. We had finished our conversation on community centers and halls. And I believe the general consensus is to keep it at 59,469. Our next one is swimming pools, beaches, and marinas. So 23,008 from the budget last year of 12,718, but expenditures of 28,029. I assume that's the operation of the swimming pool?
That's for personnel, that's for lifeguards.
Just personnel.
And the pool assistant, yeah.
Anybody have any questions about that?
no, again, I think it goes back to the discussion that we're investing money into an asset that we're not, seem to be generating enough, we will never generate enough revenue for it. It's a big asset for Hillsborough and totally promote it, but we gotta find that balance of what we can charge for an entrance fee versus the amount of money that we're putting into it.
Can I just, before we move forward, on the swimming pool as well, there are increased costs this coming year, again, due to the turnover of staff and knowledge within the team. We're now having to go out and get a commercial company to come and do a opening and closing of the pool, and there's some repairs required on some of the lines underneath the concrete, which they're going to look at when we do the pool opening in the spring. We'll need fixing to ensure the pool can keep running.
And that's the next line, the next budget
Yeah.
line, right?
Because if I may, you're bringing a company in to start the pool?
We had to do a pool opening to ensure all the lines are correctly, all the chemical stuff is all done correctly to ensure it's safe for use.
And to teach the existing staff how to do it,
Did they not do that before?
not on their own.
Really? They had somebody come in?
I
No.
think previously there was staff on the public works team that knew how to run and manage a pool.
Yeah.
However, we no longer have that.
This is where we say that the training of our public works staff is very important, because we don't have a lot of backup plans if we lose an employee that had all a skill set, that we need to make sure that the other employees also have a skill set.
I thought we already had one. Still there.
Me too. That's my understanding.
He
There
did
was a
he
di-
did all the work. The guy was still there.
We can talk about it in a
Yeah.
closed session.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting to know.
And there's some repairs that need to be done.
Yeah, there's some lines already coming.
There's some repairs that need to be done as a result of it not being properly closed last year.
They never fixed that then? Did you shut that pump off?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Correct.
Anyway. All right.
Oh,
Yes, Deputy Mayor Errol.
So this is a significant increase. It's double. Just on the personnel side. And the operations side, it's going up by almost 50%. And there's, the proposal from administration was not to increase the user fee, echoing Councillor Elderkin. I'm all for the pool, but the pool is getting quite expensive. It's $60,000 for the pool, and we didn't increase what was the logic about not increasing the revenue? I realize that's back on our revenue page, but we didn't really talk about it there, other than saying we had noted that it hadn't increased. And now we're here with even more personnel, and I'm just wondering whether we can afford the scope of the operation we're envisioning for 2025.
So let's keep our conversation at the first line, which is the 23,008. That's for the staffing of the pool. Last year, I think if you look back, it was a successful year. There were lessons that were provided and so on. It definitely came at a cost, but the operation of the pool last year, at least in my opinion, was at a level that we haven't seen in a long time, and our revenues doubled from the previous year to
I would say more than double.
well, it was showing 5,000 in 2024, and it's showing, I'm just going by the numbers that were in the sheet I just scrolled up, it was showing double from 2023 to 2024. So That's not to say that we shouldn't be looking at what we charge for user fees. We also need to be mindful that you need to strike a balance in setting user fees where there are some families who maybe cannot afford to be paying double what they're currently paying, so. Yes?
Correct on that. I want to add on the user fee part of it. When we were in the discussions on the revenues, we had said that we needed some time to do an assessment of what all of these buildings and facilities and all of our assets are costing us. And then we can come back and say, this is what the plan should be. We don't know what the rate of the pool should be. We don't have a good analysis of how much the pool is currently costing us. So same with the arena, same with these buildings. We want to have an opportunity to come back and look at the municipal rental plans to say, are we charging enough money? We want to look at the incubator spaces in Alma and saying, what's the going rate right now for commercial rates? What is our hydro? What is our, so it's a bigger piece that we need some time to look at properly in order to be able to determine what our rates should be. There's always an opportunity to change the rates. We can change the rates in March for the pool, and that increases on our revenues. So there's always an opportunity. It's not to say that we can't raise them for the summer. It just means that we'd like a little bit of time in order to do some research into it and find out what we should be raising it to.
Further comments, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I do have more comments. So, just on the revenue side, and then I'll move on to the expenditure side. I think even on the other day when we discussed this, Councillor Elkin suggested that we did sort of the same thing with the rink at one point. We weren't even raising it even a little, as opposed to waiting and then deciding maybe later it's going to be too much. It just seemingly everything else costs money. Why we would be holding any rate at zero rate increase at zero, it strikes me as not particularly wise. But so if the pool here is totally of $60,000, what's linked to me to this expenditure and how I view it is that we haven't got to, and we will get to, the Alma Rec Council amounts that we would contribute to keeping a youth type operation going down at a much different location in the municipality, right? This is, the pool is a long way away from Alma. If we support in some degree the Alma Rec Council, I'm okay to support this being an expanded operation in Hillsborough, because that's what it is. It's an expanding operation. It's a good one, but it's expanding. I will not support this if this expanding operation is at the expense of providing assistance, financial assistance to the Alma Rec Council.
Thank you. Councillor Jonah.
What is our current fee for use of the pool right now?
$2, I think.
$2.
Yeah.
Just want to kind of reflect on something that Councillor Albert mentioned. It's good for Hillsborough. We have users from all over Fundy Albert here, so it's not just Hillsborough pool. It is used by all the Fundy Alberters, so it's good for everybody. Just not Hillsborough.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And my apologies if you took it that way, but that's not what my intent was. It is used for all of Fundy Albert, but we have to find that balance to maintain all these things. At some point, we're not posh. We only have so many taxpayers.
And in a way, I kind of view the pool the same way that I view this activity center. There are people who use this activity center for free. And so we're actually getting people to pay for the pool. So it's a service that we provide for our municipality, and we shouldn't be trying to break even. We should be making sure that all levels of our community are able to benefit from that service. And we, like I said, we provide the service here for certain groups for free, so we need to be mindful of that as well.
Absolutely. The other thing I would add is that I don't know if I'd compare the revenue from 2024 to 2023. It's not fair because the pool was barely open in 2023. So there should be a significant increase. The pool closed early in 2023, and it wasn't even open 5 days a week most of the time.
Right.
So I don't think that's a fair comparison revenue-wise.
Yeah. Councillor Ward Russell.
Yeah, I was just, I would like to start this one as well for further conversations as we get down to the bottom of our day-to-day. You know, $60,000 is a lot. I think we need to prorate what actually needs to be done now versus what can we push until 2026 and have a plan. Because I mean, you can't put, you know, it's a lot. $35,000 is a lot just to fix that right now. And I mean, residents need to understand that would they rather, like, I don't know, it's to me, it's too much to put into one item right now.
So noted. Thank you. So there may be an opportunity when we get into it in camera to talk about this first line, but in terms of the second line, which was an increase from 25,000 to 35,000, it has been noted that there were repairs required at the pool and those need to be fixed, otherwise we're kind of living on borrowed time. And there's also the operation of the pool, which I believe is included in that. Right. So are there any questions and noting Councillor Ward Russell's concerns, are there any other concerns with leaving it at $35,000? Councillor?
No, my question actually is just, I had one last question about the personnel one, can I?
Yep.
This is linked to, I'll keep asking this question because I'm just trying to understand. So, in different lines. For this, the personnel line, does this include the contributions from the public works staff?
No, this is solely for 3
The lifeguards
lifeguards
and such.
and 1 pool assistant.
So the public works staff contributions to the pool is listed where?
It's under workshops.
Workshops.
Yeah.
And do we know how, over the last 3 years, what the public works contribution to the pool has been in terms of, like, my sense is it's certainly not zero, that the pool demands public works resources throughout the season. And I have this sense that it's, as the pool is used more and it's more successful, it's actually drawing more resources from public works during the summer months. And I'm nervous that those resources are being drawn towards the pool at the expense of other activities within Fundy Albert that they are assigned to. This is just my sense, and if, without seeing any numbers that to support this either, it's hard to know.
First of all, Deputy Mayor, that's an unfair question for our treasurer.
No,
because this
I'm
is
not actually
operations.
looking at, and it's even unfair for.
It's unfair
for
even for our
yeah.
Director of Operations. I suspect there is you're correct, there would be some requirement. I think they do daily water testing and that kind of stuff, so.
So to that point, and I don't know really how to phrase it, but our public works staff already has to travel from one end of Fundy Albert to the other. So travel time takes up their time. The work that they need to do takes up their time. But I feel that where that question is going to is, how are they logging their time? And if we need to add an administrative component to what they're doing, but that's kind of what you're asking, how many hours it takes. So we can do a general plan, which what we're planning on doing. Our Director of Operations is already working on how much time does it take generally to mow lawns, to water gardens, to, you know, do the pool. So we are working on that plan for 2025. That didn't exist when we got here, so we don't have historical data on it. But my concern would be is if we start asking our public works employees to go, how many hours did you spend on these things? We're going to then further lose a lot of productive time. So if you're going for a general plan, then absolutely that is what we're working on.
The idea, the concern that I have is, so, you know, we see the 60,000 to run the pool, and 23 of that, or 25 of that is personnel. That's actually not really the true cost. What I'm saying is the true cost is the additional cost of the public works people, which as councillors, when we look here, we don't actually have any sense of what, even of a person year that is, because you can't see it. And we never see it broken out any other way. That's all I'm saying.
And that actually feeds then to that plan that we want to look at what these facilities are costing us, and that's what it is. It's not just hydro, it's not just how does this get allocated, and we will come back to council.
Council Lyon.
Thank you, Mayor. Last couple of years, I've been around the pool a lot. We did a dig there, changed all the lines, and did some upkeep in that facility. Big time, saved a lot of money. It's unfortunate that there's a line leaking. I know where it is, I know what the situation is, the whole deal, that's fine. But as far as staff go, I know where you're going with the cost, it is a cost, but once that pool is up and running, they fill it, they clean it, they keep the chemicals in, all they do is check it. The staff in the daytime do most of the maintenance as far as garbage and all that kind of stuff, right? So your extra cost you're pushing towards as far as public works is minimal in the summertime once she's up and running, because there's nothing to do. All they gotta do is keep that water, the pH stuff level and the alkaline rate. Mum's your word, check the pumps, they're all new, away you go.
Okay, good.
So our cost in that portion of public works, what you're trying to get at, John?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to beat you down, I'm
Yeah.
just trying to fill you in. It's very minimal because it's a daily thing that is the same.
Okay.
And whether you have 10 people or 1,000 people, because the staff in the daytime are the ones that are cleaning the garbage and doing the tidying up. Just like
All right,
you said.
so thank you. Anyone else? No? So that pretty much covers community pools, beaches, and marinas, and swimming pools, beaches, and marinas other. Skating rinks and arenas. So the budget last year was $92,264, and the budget in 2025 is $114,639. That's not to speak of the revenues, but rather that's likely the increased cost of extending the season, I would suspect.
I can let the treasurer speak on that one, but there's also the water treatment plan that we now have to do
right.
in that facility that we did not have to do previously.
So are there any questions in
The
relation
arena
to
for
that?
Legionnaires, the compressor you have to do.
Legionella, yep.
Legionella, sorry. It requires a water treatment plan that has to be maintained and opened and closed properly, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, so were you on personnel line or the other line?
The first one, personnel.
Okay.
So that,
Oh, apologies.
and
The
again,
personnel line's up $22,000 from last year, so are we estimating that we have to hire more for the rink for this winter?
I would suggest, well, in the rink, and again, we're running at the minimum amount of staff that we can safely run with at the moment. And this was highlighted on Thursday night when there was fights between different hockey teams where we've only got 2 staff on. One's upstairs, one's trying to do maintenance, and then we've got nobody else to manage those issues. We're trying to increase the staff, 1, so we can deliver a better service, and 2, for their own safety as well. It is something I've got to look into with Hillsborough Minor Hockey League. I'm going to speak to them next week about the way that users behave, but we've got to ensure that we've got the correct number of staff at all times throughout. So there will be a bit of increase, because I think in the past there has just been 1 person on running the arena at times. We're going to try and reduce that cost by looking at hiring students and things like that, but we certainly do need to look at the staff we have in there. At the moment, to ensure we've got the staff in there this year, we are reducing the resources in the public works team to ensure we've got it in the arena, to ensure that people can get trained and it's run safely. As they get more comfortable with the way it is now, we should see some of those resources move back over to public works, hopefully. But moving forward, we do need to keep a very close eye on how we resource the arena.
If I may, Mayor, is there a timeline and how long you're keeping the staff that you have there? Is like March, April, like have you got just
The arena season finishes, I think it's
April 15th.
April, I know it's early April.
yeah?
It's like the last
So
day.
everybody will stay until then.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, we're going to, once the, trying to remember his name.
We are trying to build capacity again in the
Yeah.
team, right? So there's currently we're training as many people in the arena as we can so that we have that cross-functional ability between arena staff and public works staff.
Yeah, there's
But we're also looking at the hours of the arena as a change as well. Does it need to open at 7 o'clock in the morning and go till 11 o'clock at night? And what the work carries out throughout that time.
Yeah. There's going to be a
Thank
peak as well within the, just can't think of the word at the moment, big competition where lots of people play.
Tournament?
There you go, tournament. It's just Saturday morning, sorry. So once the tournament piece is finished, that's where we're going to start looking at slightly changing the schedule to try and draw some of the resources away from there. So it will be before April, but it will
It'll be again
slowly go down rather than just pulling a whole 40 hours of resource out there in one go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ward Russell.
So do I understand that you are hiring, or you're looking to hire additional staff? Or you're
Not for this season.
Not for this season.
Not for 2024, but in 2025?
So 2025, I've already been looking at the schedule about how we can do what we already hold, extending the hours of some of the seasonal workers. So we've got a guy on that does 20 hours this year. We could expand that next year, and then looking at students, it would then give us, looking at my schedule, more people on for longer periods during the day, but it will actually be a saving if we can hire those students compared to what it has been this year.
Because if I'm not mistaken, you will have 2 additional staff as of February, because the garbage a couple days a week is going to be reduced. So those staff should become available to you at some point, somehow. So I'm not sure if I think that you do need additional staff at this point, based on the 2 that could become available, i.e. February 1st.
Yes, Deputy Mayor.
I remember, maybe it was last year, the council became aware that there was another cost that was, it wasn't never really visible. It might have been the flooding. There was, I don't think it was an employee, it might have been a contract.
Yeah, it was flooding.
Is that?
It's removed from this year because we have employed that
Oh, okay.
contractor.
Okay.
Yes.
That's my question, thank you.
All right, thank you. So any further questions on the personnel side?
Do we need to keep it at 114, or is there room to move on that?
I'm not hearing anybody saying it can be reduced.
I think it's going, I think in the in-camera it's gonna become a broader
Right.
discussion.
Yes.
And we will be holding an in-camera today.
Yep.
The cost of the operation of the rink is actually decreasing from 152,667. We're down to 141,478.
So that, like John had asked, that excludes the contractor that did flooding and a small piece of contingency I had taken out from repairs that we budgeted for last year.
So that explains the reduction. Any questions there? So we'll move on.
The only thing is because we've heard of other times that the rink seems like it's a challenge waiting to happen. I'm talking on the equipment functionality part. Everything's aging. It just seems odd that the cost is actually going down. But
I had a big chunk in there, but I'm just trying to find savings at this point and really focusing on getting our feasibility study completed so we can go back to the Green Municipal Fund and get for capital repairs.
That
Yes.
was going to be my point. So thank you, Jillian.
Okay.
It's we're really trying to just maintain what we can right now until we get that feasibility study, and then we can hopefully tap into some grants that are available.
Next one, parks and playgrounds personnel. So there's an increase in the budget from 11,414 to 17,902. So if there are any specific questions about the personnel costs, we can have those conversations around closed session. Parks and playgrounds other, so that would be an increase from 12,000 to 17,992. I suspect this is where the Kodiak Cycling Trails request is.
Yep.
Any discussion on this point?
So that increase of $5,000 is solely for Kodiak Trails?
No. A portion of that is for a contingency of about $2,500 for the ball field lights for Legion Street field.
Did we not just replace the ball fight?
We did replace some, but not all.
We just replaced one?
One set, and we checked the electrical because the boom truck was there. We checked the electrical for the other ones, but as we've realized, there is a cost associated with maintaining all of our assets, and having some money in case the other lights go off. We would need to have something in place to fix them.
But they are working as
Well, everything is working currently, correct.
And does that include the entire request from Kodiak Cycling Trails, because there's 2 components of it?
Yes, so like we have like a general $12,000 that it would come out of most of our trails were maintained and with the new shoreline project that was completed this year, but it also leaves a little bit extra in case we have trail erosion in the wetland park areas.
Councillor Coates.
Does that include anything in, Ward 6 playground?
No,
That playground doesn't belong to the municipality, Councillor.
I realize that.
So,
Yep, just hang on.
sorry.
No? Deputy Mayor Arrow?
No, I have a similar question to Councillor Coates. Does this include any amounts for the Alma Rec Council support?
no.
Is there
This
a
is
reason?
this is just strictly to maintain our assets that we own.
I noticed that in that in 2023, the personnel part of this budget was $4,800, and now it's almost going to be 18. I'm trying to just understand, not rates of pay, but just who is this, and what are they doing?
These are 3 public works students that we'll be bringing in.
This is students.
Yeah, so there's the hopes of our 2 regular students we get, and plus an additional student that would be able to work on a project of identifying our water lines and sewer lines and connections. And our infrastructure.
So, yeah, whether things are owned and run by the municipality or not, starts to get really blurry in this area for me. So we had White Rock is being supported, but it's seemingly like the playgrounds in other parts of the community, or the Alma Rec Council, which is doing more than playgrounds, is not being supported. We could say maybe it's coming through on a grant line item, but I think this area is needing some further study. Maybe we leave it as it is right now, but we may be circling back to this as we continue to finish this, because there's an, I won't use the word inequality, but there's an imbalance that's shaping up here in terms of where the recreation facilities are that we're funding versus where all our people are.
Okay,
So
maybe our CAO can speak to that.
Well, it's just these are the assets that we own. So whether somebody else is maintaining them on our behalf or we're maintaining them, there's going to have to be a cost involved. So in here, I mean, we did put White Rock Recreational Park because we own that, and there needs to be maintenance on it. The discussion on who's going to do that is before council in a different manner. But these are all the things that we have to own and maintain. We own the White Rock Recreation. We own those trails. We own, the ball field. Well, we have an agreement in place for that ball field. That's a separate little one. But the ones that you're speaking of are separate issues outside of this. We don't own those. We need to have agreements with these organizations. We possibly have to have MOUs with them. We need to have discussions on how we can partner with them. But that's, in my mind, a separate issue than the ones that we own and we need to allocate funds to.
Okay. So I recognize that, but there's nuances here that are important but not being addressed. So I continue to be supportive of White Rock, but as an example, in the previous year's budgets, there was no amount for their maintenance here. There was none, because it was other groups doing that.
There was other groups doing it.
Or not.
The requirement for and the request from Kodiak Cycling Trails, and I know there are likely to be others, and there are demands for others, is the requirement for the insurance is the result of us imposing that on them. It's not
But
them.
I'm not talking about that amount.
Let me
I'm
finish.
talking about the 6,000 amount that they
Right.
asked for.
Right. And so what they have said, and Mr. Faulkner presented to council this past week, and he said they're running out of money. They don't have money to do it, and they were pouring their own money into it. So they're asking us to fund the maintenance of our trail, not theirs. They're maintaining, right? So that's the difference and the evolution of it. In the past, they would basically pay for all this stuff themselves.
I don't know if this is called trying to ask, but Deputy Mayor, you brought up Albert Rec Council 2 or 3 times today. What is it that you're looking for? What is it that you're actually looking for support for them, or you don't think they're getting? I just like to wrap my head around what we.
So maybe the better question, maybe before Deputy Mayor Arrow answers, is there an amount for anything for the Alma Rec Centre in the budget?
Unless they're applying for a grant that I'm
No.
not aware of those amounts,
Okay.
I don't know.
No, all right. So Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, so if we step back and say, what's the Alma Rec Council doing? They're in large measure providing activities and programs for the youth in the lower part of Fundy Albert, right? And they have a board of directors. It's a nonprofit organization that raises funds through their own means, and historically there's, at least in recent years, there's been a linkage with the municipality. The facility is not owned by the municipality because the facility of the rink and area, there's more than just the rink there, long predates the creation of a municipal government. So they were in existence for before, and so it's never been absorbed into the municipality. But they're providing programs in much the same way that are happening up in the Hillsborough area, prominently, to a lesser degree in Riverside-Albert, that are owned by the municipality. So taxpayer money is flowing into these facilities in the Hillsborough area that are owned because of historical reasons they're owned by the municipality to help the youth. And I know you're a big supporter of that. But down in Alma, just because of the fact that they're not owned the facilities, even though they're mostly run by volunteers, but they're in danger of not even being able to run. In large measure linked to liability insurance, but there's more than that. And so they are seeking the support of our council to provide some form of assistance so they can operate.
Now that I better understand where you're coming from, I will let you know when the time comes.
Yeah.
You got my support.
Okay.
And him kids, I'm all over, and I appreciate what they do now.
But,
All right.
but the time is in and around this or grants later.
All right. Anyone else? Councillor Elderton.
I just need some clarification here to wrap something around my head. So the budget line is up $5,000 from last year, which $2,500 of, maybe I misunderstood, $2,500 is a contingency plan
Yes, for the lights.
for the lights. So that leaves $2,500 difference from the increase. Is that specifically to cover the insurance for White Rock? Because
just-
White Rock wasn't in this budget line before.
It's just like there's like a base amount for trail maintenance and for the Hillsborough area trails, and that was $12,000. Plus there's the property tax and lease for the properties and insurance.
So, I'm trying to, and I don't think I'm getting my head around this. So there's a request on the table for White Rock.
It's just,
Is that
we're
amount
taking
that
it out
they're
of trail
requesting in our
maintenance.
current budget that's being proposed? That's what I'm not seeing. I'm not seeing that the $6,000 maintenance that's come to council is in this budget. Because it was never on this budget line. So to me, it would have to be increased $6,000 in order to cover White Rock. So there's something I'm not quite understanding on this line item.
We don't have to maintain our trails as much as we did last year because we had a lot of work done last year. So that part has lowered, but the extra could cover White Rock.
Thank you. That's the part I wasn't getting.
Yes?
I just want a point of clarification that in one of the Committee of the Whole reports, when we were discussing White Rock Recreational Park, the Village of Hillsborough pre-amalgamation did request a $10,000 upkeep of that area. That was not approved by the transition coordinator at the time, and then that amount then just fell off the budget, I believe, last year. So it was budgeted item pre-amalgamation, from what I understand,
It was budgeted.
in
No.
Hillsborough, pre-amalgamation.
Okay, so I thought they had told us that it wasn't budgeted pre-amalgamation. They tried to put it in the budget for amalgamation and it didn't get approved.
To my-
So I misunderstood.
Yeah.
I didn't think Hillsborough ever contributed to the maintenance, that Kodiak Trails took it over.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
We had requested, and the CAO is correct, we had requested a $10,000 amount to be included in the budget for 2023 that was prepared by the transition facilitator, and he did not include it in there. So there was no money in 2023.
Right, but it was included in the Village of Hillsborough, that $10,000 was in the Village of
Prior
Hillsborough?
to that, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. One last one, Councillor, Deputy Mayor Arrow.
Just for clarification and accuracy here. I'm looking at, in the budget proposal document, Appendix A, which is a list of Fundy Albert owned facilities. And under Hillsborough, you don't see the ball field there. And I think it's because we've learned before, the ball field's not owned, correct, by the municipality. So it's not unlike, to use the Alma Rec Council as an example of, it's not owned, it's not owned. It's as I mentioned earlier, it's a bit more nuanced, this subject area than just that, because we see that the budget is including amounts for the maintenance of the lights at the ball field, which I get, and that's important, and we council previously approved that, but that facility is not actually owned. So we need to be, as a council, I think, mindful that it's nuanced how the facilities are that are providing services for our youth, and we need to be trying to support them all in every way we can.
So
So are we raising this section?
Deputy Mayor Arrow, do we have a sense of what the amount is that the Alma Rec Council is looking for? And if so, maybe we should add it
Well,
in.
I think there has been recent communication actually between, I know our CAO, myself, the Rec Council, I can't remember else who's been involved. So I think there are things, we're going in the right direction maybe there. I just don't see anything in the budget, and even the treasurer's just said, there's nothing there.
Right.
So maybe between now and the next break, I'll be able to get the number.
62, it was it was the insurance piece, plus they asked an additional 4,500, I believe, for some repairs. So if you're asking to include it, would you like this section then to be raised by 6,000?
That's
Yes.
what I'm hearing.
Yes, let's do it.
But
So
yeah,
we can
still
do
have a
that during-
discussion
we
at
can
some
do-
point.
Do
too,
that
yeah.
during the break. All right. Moving on. Cultural buildings and facilities. So there's a slight increase in the budget from 2024 of 18,562 to 21,594. So cultural buildings, I'm assuming you referred to that earlier, is part of the Alma Cultural Center.
Correct.
And
That's strictly
Yeah.
just for operational costs?
Yep.
any questions there?
Just operation, no upgrades?
Correct.
Thank you.
Anything else, Deputy Mayor?
Well, linked to this budget line and the previous one that was similar, which was the recreational facilities, right? So we know that these amounts that we see under the expenditure column are partially offset by revenue. These buildings actually generate revenue. And the revenue proposal for this year is 0% increase pending a review. That's correct, right?
Correct.
So do we know right now, with 0% increase in revenue, roughly how much of these operating costs, of these those two budget lines, you know, the rec line and this line, are covered by the revenue.
For the culture building, we actually make a profit.
Yeah.
2/3 of the spaces are rented,
Yeah,
and
so-
the one third is we use for municipal everything.
Purposes. Yeah.
So okay, so we're making a profit on these.
Right. That answer your question?
Yeah, and again, on the personnel line is empty, and that's because the custodial services are somewhere else, correct?
I believe it's only a portion of the building that we provide cultural or
Custodial
services too.
custodial services to.
It would just be for the multicultural room,
Yeah.
not for the gallery space or
No, okay,
the
yeah,
store
but
downstairs.
even
Yeah.
for the space that you and I were meeting in the other day, where's that number for the custodial service for all that?
That would just be under public works section.
The workshops again?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Councillor Ward Russell.
Not that I wanna see any increases, but I think this is where you get yourself into a mess, is if this is only for operational costs and no upgrades. I think, you know, I don't wanna see 2026 come back and go, oh, we need another $10,000 or $15,000 because we didn't do any upgrades last year. That's why I think it's important that you are always doing something, but you can't do it everywhere, so I'm shocked to see that there is no upgrades listed there.
Brand new,
because-
it's a fairly new building. Yeah. But I agree, we do need to have squirrel away money every year so that in 10 years when it needs upgrades, there's a pot of money
Not that I
there.
wanna compare it to the gazebo, but it's the same idea. If you don't fix something and maintain something, you're gonna get into a mess, so. Even though it's a new building, a new house always needs improvements every year, so I'm shocked to see that there is nothing.
All right. Thank you. So we move on to the next one, museums. And I believe that is only the Steve's Museum.
Correct.
So there's a fairly significant increase from 8,700 in 2024 to 20,924 in 2025. Yes,
What is that increase for?
It's for the foundation repair that's needed.
On what building?
the museum, the Steve's
Steve's
Museum.
house.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
In 2024, there was a
Yeah.
foundation
Okay, sorry.
issue. We've managed this year with dehumidifiers and a repair to the sewer line, but it requires foundation work.
Thank you.
So we're just looking at the foundation, not the deck and the steps.
Correct.
The deck
The deck was
apparently has
actually
been repaired by
repaired.
them.
Have they, no, that's hard to get quotes, I appreciate that, but have they looked into what the cost would be to get this, or have you looked into the cost of what that foundation repair would be?
That is based on a quote that we received in 2024, so it is an estimate. We'll have to re-quote when we're close to doing it.
Yep.
And do they put any money into this at all?
It's our
Hillsborough
building. It's owned by the municipality. They're just an occupant.
Do we rent it? Like when we have our council meetings there, is there,
I don't
That's the
believe we-
reciprocal agreement. From what I understand, we get to use the space in that Egypt room for our uses,
we don't pay for that?
so we don't pay for that.
Deputy Mayor Earl?
I'm just wondering, is there, this looks, well, for the Steve's house, and I know we appreciate when we use it, and those who visit the museum, I'm sure appreciate it. It looks like it's got the potential to be some form of money pit. Is there a way that, because it is a museum, a historical house and things like that, is there a way that these major repairs, such as the foundation, there's grants available for that kind of stuff?
Those are all options that we're looking at for all of our, and this is why, I'm saying if we have an opportunity to list out all of it, here's what it's costing us, here's our 10-year plan on things, and where can we find funding? Is there funding available? That's the piece to all of this, and what do we need to raise it's a bigger project, and I know that seems to always be the answer that we have, but as I've said, we didn't come into this position with all of this information at our fingertips, so we have to go out and find it and get those reports so we can start making some educated decisions and some important decisions on, is this worth keeping, is it not worth keeping, what kind of investment do we have to do to this in the future?
Yeah, but this one, I agree with all that, so thank you. But this one is fundamentally different, this facility, right? That this is, It's a historic house. It's used as a museum. It's not like all of our other facilities, which are, it's not, this one is
Yeah.
unique.
So there could be specific grants,
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay.
Yep. All right, the next line is infrastructure cost sharing, which is the $1,385.
The libraries, sorry, you fixed the
Oh.
library.
So, sorry, libraries. Increase from 8,082 in 2024 to 27,844 in 2025. This is a request from the library. They're stating that, I think if I can kind of summarize it, that we haven't been funding it properly over the years, and that there are certain standards that need to be met.
This just basically includes, their librarian expenses, the building itself, plus a $5,000 building contingency.
Right.
So there's nothing really extra than previous years.
Daily
It's
cleaning,
just-
which they've never had. Which I think there was some of the request, apparently the standards say daily cleaning.
Mhm.
Councillor Land first.
So some of this budget money we're seeing now must have been in another unit somewhere, because you got $8,000.
Yeah, it was previously in the office buildings. That's where we see
You
the decrease
separated
in,
it.
yes.
Yeah. Councillor Eldricken.
Well, for me, it has changed a little bit, because last year they only occupied half of the building. So this year, at some point, we must have approved that they could have the whole building and that we were gonna cover all the expenses for it. But I don't remember having that discussion. They just seemed to take over the library when we moved out. So so the difference, not that I'm not supporting the library, I 100% am. But at some point, I think council needs to make the decision that yes, we're gonna support the library to utilize that whole building, which we didn't make that decision. So there has been an increase from last year because they occupy the whole building now, not just a portion of it.
We still have to heat it.
Exactly, the costs are there regardless of whether, we only truly occupied those two small offices. The boardroom was still shared between the library and the village office at the time. So the space that we came out of was two small offices, as you know. And then all of the additional costs of heating it and water, everything else is the same whether we're there or not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's a bigger discussion that I think we didn't have when we moved out of the office, as to what the plans were moving forward for the library, which now we're happy.
Right. Councillor Ward Russell, did you have a comment?
So are they looking for an additional $20,000 this year? Is that what I understand by this? They went from 8.
Well, and maybe I misspoke at the beginning, but I believe their ask includes daily cleaning where it had never been provided before.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what was being provided at the very end of it, but I know that that had been a request even from the former village of Hillsborough, that their request has actually increased.
We've increased the cleaning budget a little bit, but it's still mostly the building costs for that building.
Well, it's in our priorities here, which I'm assuming that's what the increase covers. What you've identified is a computer system upgrade. And I think that includes a printer, promotion, programs, mini split cleaning, facility cleaning per library daily in brackets, and carpet cleaning 3 times a year. So I'm assuming these are the priorities that increase the budget up $20,000 for this year. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, we've always budgeted for, like in last year, we budgeted for the carpet cleaning, the mini split cleaning, furnace service. That's stuff we budget for every year for that building.
So the increase of $20,000 is probably for the computer system upgrade, office equipment. Like $20,000 is a chunk of change.
Almost $20,000 is probably what the building operating, that building. It's heated with oil,
So has it moved from another budget line to this?
yes, as stated earlier, it comes from the office building.
Yeah.
It was a shared cost between the village and the library before, and it is no longer a shared cost.
What is the increase then?
It's just the building itself, like it's,
But if you add those 2 line items together, what you took out before and added to the 8,700, or what is, like, are we doing a $3,000 increase, or
So
is it?
19,000. Yeah, 19,000 is the operating for that building.
So, if I may, in that increase, they got a new computer and a new printer also, correct?
They're asking.
They're
Asking.
requesting.
They're
So,
requesting.
but that is in that budget number.
There's 8,100 for their regular list of operating, plus the 19,000 for the building. That's all that's included in that line.
I believe I put that in the,
Anyway, so it's 19,000 for the operation of the building and
8,100.
8,100 for their ask. What it doesn't include, just hang on, what it doesn't include is the presentation that we heard the other night, that they're looking for renovations. So if we don't allocate any funding in here for renovations, it'll have to be removed from someplace else.
It doesn't include that?
No. Well, no. If you recall the presentation, I asked how much that was going to be. They haven't even gotten any quotes for that yet. So that doesn't include anything. So if council wants to be able to allow them to do that, we have to put some funding in here for that.
Okay, so,
Yep.
I definitely have questions.
Deputy Mayor?
And I am highly supportive of the library. I think we would do ourselves a service if this broad line item, you know, one line item that ends up at almost 28,000, if we did know what is the ask from the library board. I
8,100.
know, but for in future, we should just lay it out there, right? What the library board is asking, and I in future, you know, I would like to receive. Have I received or have we councillors received that number ask?
Yes.
From the library? We did. Do you guys recall seeing that?
It was in an email.
it was included in the
Oh, okay.
email with the budget
Okay.
information.
So there's that, and then there's an amount to run the building. And because I went and had a tour there recently, private tour, just on spec because I happened to be there. And it sounds like there is some element of public works involvement. And you'd probably know more. Like, what does our public works staff do for that building? Just in broad terms, do you know? Like, do they shovel? They shovel the steps. What else do they do?
In the past, if there were any minor repairs that were required, they
Could do
did the
minor
repairs.
but
Yeah,
they,
but
they
that-
don't clean it, they don't empty that, they
Yeah.
actually take the garbage to the curb, but they don't empty garbage cans in the facility. That's done by the cleaner and by the
But I
library
got the
staff.
impression during my tour that some of the renovations, that for them to go into this new mode that we linked to the presentation that Melody gave us, that there's public works involvement in that.
So some of the works that they've requested, we could look at public works doing some of that. The more simple stuff like removing the AC units in the window, things like that. There are other parts of the works, like I think it's removing walls and moving stuff like that, which is probably outside of the skill set of our public works.
And not included here?
No.
Why aren't we
Melody
including their?
didn't present that information.
Hmm?
I said it wasn't presented, like the concept of what they would like to see, but the cost associated with it wasn't presented. And I asked specifically that question, how much is this gonna cost? And they had no idea. So
Okay.
the
That wasn't it.
challenge, no,
Yeah.
and the challenge is, if we don't include anything in there, they're going to come with an ask and we're not going to have allocated any funding whatsoever.
Yeah, so
That's,
sounds to me like this number needs to be higher right now, or else we're just setting
if
ourselves up for
council,
failure.
if council's to consider the request to renovate, yes, it needs to go higher. Sorry, Councillor Ward Russell.
Listen, I think the library is extremely important, but I think that just shows again the importance of us trying to put some money into a new location where the library can join us. Like, we're putting 20, like, I mean, if you start going through some of these items of what we're putting into all other municipally owned facilities, like, it's large. Like, it's time that we actually put that on our radar, and it hasn't been yet. You know, not that I don't think that their plans or for their phases 1, 2, and 3 are not achievable, but I don't believe they're achievable in 2025.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Land?
I would have to concur, where we are with their budget, back to the same conversation I had earlier, I don't think this is the time for this. They have a building, they're doing fine. They didn't tell us that they were looking for funds on their own. They're doing some small charity work locally, which is great. But they got $8,100 over budget, plus they got our building, the whole building now. And I'm not there to put any more money in this.
Okay. Just to be clear, they were asking, they did say they were going to be coming
I know they did.
with an ask.
I'm not
So
there.
it's
I'm
not
not there.
fair to say that they weren't asking for anything. They
Okay.
are, they will be.
They have
What
since
they
the
just
spring.
don't know what the number is.
Yeah.
right?
My point of view is, I'll stick with this number.
Okay. Councillor Alderton, no? No? Councillor Jonah?
I'd like to go to the daily cleaning, if I may, for a minute.
Yeah.
Pre-COVID, it was once a month, our staff at the village office and the librarian at the time took care of the run-of-the-mill day-to-day cleaning themselves. We brought somebody in to the big cleaning once a month. Then during COVID, we had upped the ante. We had to move to every other week or once a week or whatever it was. So now they're asking for a daily cleaning. Is this something that's being mandated by the province, or is this just?
They say yes.
They say it is.
It is.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I saw the request from
Okay.
the province.
Okay. So I'm sensing that the request would stay at what it is currently, and that's, so be mindful that, and your point's well taken, Councillor Ward Russell, that, you know, like, council just for some reason needs to make a decision to find a new location, a new municipal office, and that would and could include divesting of certain properties to reduce our costs. But that's a conversation, a much broader conversation for another day. So,
It's time.
so unless you have something else,
Just the last
Deputy
one.
Mayor?
In the budget document, proposal document, this document actually, under the library, the last bullet of, it says renovation. What is that for? Just look, scroll up actually a little bit more. Oh. Hillsborough Library, you're gonna see there, the last bullet there says other renovation costs of the library. So that implies that this is included in this proposal. What is that number?
It could be simply painting, repainting a wall.
They always have an ask for
But
painting.
but
Well,
that's
that would be
part
the
of what we're about to
carpet
approve.
cleaning and the, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's the minor renovations, not
Mini
what
split
they're
cleaning,
asking.
those types of
This
things,
would be
yeah.
a major
I
one. Well,
think, John, they want some, windows fixed or open and, some, the heating deck, registers, they want protection, so kids aren't.
Those were
backing up.
completed in
But not these big phase 2, B and 3.
No.
I got it.
Just minor.
all right.
Like good point of.
Just quickly on that, I think some of these library costs could be added to what I'm gonna call the wish list from the province.
Out of that 27,844?
No, additional phase 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, okay.
I think that should be, like, if we're taking a tally right now of what that wish list from the province needs to include, I believe that should be added to that.
Yes.
Just a point of clarification, we did do the covers for the heaters this
Yeah.
year in '24. We painted that boardroom in '24, and we took the tree down in the backyard in '24. So there was a few things, but there are issues like the back ramp is in bad shape, and we do have a request in for that.
All right, so moving along. Infrastructure cost sharing, again, that's a fixed cost from the Southeast Regional Service Commission. Fiscal services, now a lot of these, there's really no discussion to be had on them, because unless you want clarification, these are costs that we have to pay. Interest on long-term debt, interim on long-term debt municipally shared, and perhaps there's a clarification in what's shared municipally and what's shared
And basically, fire trucks are shared amongst
by all.
And the ones that are blue,
Are the other debentures
yes.
all previously owned by the municipalities?
Yes, and they also would include, because of our application for long-term borrowing, I have to include an amount for interest and principal for the Golf Club Road culvert replacement, also with the 3-ton truck replacement in the new year.
Right. Any questions on those two? Again, these are not things that are really up for discussion other than for perhaps clarification by the treasurer.
So I just have a couple things. Can you go back to the Golf Club Road again?
Mhm.
So this includes the principal and interest payments, or just the interest for the Golf Club Road?
It includes, where's my short term? So it includes short-term interest for this project. It includes interest and a principal payment, because we'll probably, most likely be going for a debenture in the spring. There's a good chance that we will see a principal payment for that asset if we were to go for long-term borrowing for it
So
and not
how-
receiving the funding.
So how does that affect the future budget if we get this project funded by an outside source, but we budgeted it all for 2025?
So if all our funding goes through, we could take, and I presume there will be still a portion that we will have to go take for long-term. But my recommendation would be to take what money would have been used to pay for these principal and interest items and to put back in our infrastructure. Road infrastructure. Like paving, padding, for those 4 municipalities, would be my recommendation.
So
Because that is where we made cuts in private summer maintenance, private contract. We made cuts to accommodate for these payments, and we would put that money back in those departments so we can get more so if we end up with that funding, it gives us more money to do paving, ditching, culverts, things that our municipalities need because they're in misrepair.
So are you suggesting that even if it is paid by the Disaster Financial Assistance Program, that we should borrow the whole amount and reinvest it back into the municipality?
No, to
Okay.
take those funds that are allotted for
Okay.
that, to put them back into our
Okay,
infrastructure.
right, so the interest payments and.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
You sound so happy to hear from me.
No, it's just, like I said, let's not get into the amounts, but rather any clarification on
I
what
want to
they
get into
mean.
the principle of it, okay? So
Yes.
I'm trying to understand the principle.
Oh, okay.
So what, and I'm sure that our treasurer is going to be able to help me understand this, because if I get this correctly, the before amalgamation, we had the different, so this was the LSD areas, didn't have anything to do with this before. It was only the villages, and we each had assets that we had borrowed to buy. And so we had principal and interest payments that we were paying.
Yep.
But the day amalgamation happened, our fire trucks that our communities had bought individually with debt and that we were paying locally, okay, for the principal and interest, all of a sudden, am I correct in on this, that all of a sudden from the day of amalgamation, those debts became shared?
Correct.
But you know what debts didn't become shared were the buildings. The building debts, because you're seeing that, that's what's here. It makes no sense, in my view.
Mine either.
So why don't we change it? So
It's
by
a council decision.
So by the way, what this means for the LSD
The
people,
debt isn't being shared.
the debt's not being, but
The
it
debt
is for
or-
the fire trucks. So what happened is the debt for the fire trucks, on the day of
I
amalgamation,
believe it's
all of a sudden
one
the
fire.
LSD areas were partly saddled with
No,
this
the
through
two were paying
the
for it.
shared. But that
Yeah.
didn't happen to the facilities like this one, for which all of its operation is shared, And if we ever sell this building, or remember the municipal building that we almost sold in Riverside-Albert, that revenue, by the way, the proceeds of that sale are shared. So I believe we should, as a council, say, this is stupid.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's why I want
Councillor Ward Russell.
Before we even go down the road, we need to do a study, and it can't happen this year, Councillor Rowe. I think this is something that you leave as is for 2025, but you could reach out to other municipalities and find out what they do with this and come back with a recommendation at that point. But to make that decision just on the fly today, absolutely not.
Right, and I'm not really advocating this. What I'm advocating, because we're on mic and the TV, is that all our residents in this community need to realize the wacky hand that we were dealt by the province on this stuff. And it doesn't make sense. And our residents that are trying to understand the fiscal fairness problem that we have, where everyone in Fundy-Albert thinks they're getting screwed. And it's partly because of stuff like this.
Yeah, all right. Principal installments, shared by all and evenly shared, I suspect are on the same principle.
Correct.
So those should be fairly straight. Short-term interest on capital projects, what would that be?
That would be for interest on our credit lines and overdrafts for those two projects listed for the four municipalities.
And any interim financing, I suspect?
That would be the interfinancing, yes.
Yeah. Any other questions on this?
And what were those two projects again?
The Golf Club Road and the 3-ton truck replacement.
Okay.
So so the golf club road and the 3-ton truck is only being expensed by the 3 former villages.
Correct.
I'm not understanding that, but
Well, it's not if it's for public works, a 3-ton truck is for public works, it should not be expensed to all of Fundy-Albert.
well, in some regards, but when you look at what Public Works does in Riverside-Albert, they maintain Crooked Creek, they maintain our park, they maintain the rec center lawns, which is all a shared service. So I'm feeling we're not balancing here very well, that Public Works, we're covering some of it as far as the building operation is shared, but mowing the lawns and driving the trucks in order to get to the lawns is not a shared expense.
Right.
Well, I have an issue with that.
Well, noted, but right now we're not set up to be able to split that out, I don't think.
I don't know how you'd go about, we'd have to literally, like Linda said earlier, we'd have to have our staff clean out, this is how many hours we spent driving the truck to here, this is how many hours we spent mowing this area.
No, and I'm not really going that route at all, but we know approximately what it takes Public Works to mow the lawns in Riverside-Albert. It's been 2 years now, we should know. And if we choose to lease the village office in the future, that's one item that Public Works no longer has to look after. And if we lease the corner, that's another corner that Public Works. So at some point, for the village of Riverside-Albert, we should be getting some sort of savings here. Because the amount of Public Works needed in the village appears to be going down as we expand and do different things within the community. And I feel that's fair to say in Hillsborough and in Elma. Like, the maintenance of the mowing of the lawns is Public Works, and it's a shared service. So that's where my question is my thought process is going, and I know this is a broader discussion and it's under personnel, and I get that, but that's where my thought process is coming. Water's water, that's my expense, I got that.
Yeah. At some point, though, I mean, it requires, then we'll take a look at it and come back with some information on it. But, like, are we splitting pennies here? Like, what's the dollar amount? Is it worth the change if we're really only going to see a minimal impact on it, right?
It is for me.
So our
when
public
I'm-
works employees are our public works employees. They go to the 3 villages. Sometimes they're going to be more in one village than in another village.
We're not talking about that.
We're not talking about that. I'm talking about the tax dollars that Riverside-Albert is paying for public works to maintain a shared service for all of Fundy Albert, as opposed to what is just Riverside-Albert. The sidewalks, I get it. Well, yeah, the sidewalks, I guess, are mine, but we don't really maintain them. If you look at them, they're not maintained. They are whippersnipped around in the summer. So my question, I guess, is what does Public Works specifically do for the village, former village of Riverside-Albert, that's not a shared service? That's my question.
That would be, I would think it would need a more in-depth and like do an have our director of operations do an evaluation, you know, next year of how much time is spent on each shared versus municipally owned. And I think next year it'd make it easier for me as a treasurer to say, okay, 25% of our time is spent working on shared infrastructure. So 25% of salaries would be allotted to LSDs to pay their share, but I don't think we're prepared at this time to do that change.
No, and I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying when I thought about it, and I'm thinking, well, it's the rec center.
Oh, it's very
It's at
valid.
McKellen Park, it's Crooked Creek, which are all shared services. But yet I think I'm carrying the ball in the former village to maintain it. That's what I'm,
And I think there as well, we are working on a work plan which is going to get down into the detail of how long does it take to cut the grass, Hillsborough, Alma, Riverside-Albert. Once we've got that work plan in, I'll be able to sit down with the treasurer and really get into the weeds of what percentage of is that shared, what percentage is sits with each former village.
Yeah.
We're not in that position yet.
Folks, we're having a conversation, but this is about the budget. Now, I
This is
recognize.
about the budget.
No, but this is about the budget. It's not gonna get cured this year. I think that's what they're saying.
But it,
This
but
can't
it is
get-
good to note that
Oh, yeah.
that these are the studies that our council wants us
To do.
to
Yeah.
do, like
Right.
as an administration.
Right.
And it absolutely helps us as well to understand how much time we are spending in each village, because it helps us shape the way we do things.
correct. That's part of why I brought up the conversation. Thank you.
It has already been thought of, it's just, it takes time to develop this plan.
Thank
It's
you
going to
to
be
you
a
both.
lot of work.
Deputy Mayor Arrow, if you
Yeah,
would.
but I think actually we're talking about different things. We're not talking about, I believe, with Councillor Eldican here, it's not about how much time Public Works is spending in the different villages. That's not what we're talking about. That's an interesting subject, but that's not
It's
what we're
about
talking
what's
about.
shared and
Yes.
what isn't shared.
So
Which
what
when we
would
get the
that-
work plan, we'll be able to figure out
Right.
which task is shared, which is not.
Yeah, but so what's really weird though is that when we go way back earlier, remember we were talking, remember how I kept asking you, are your staff in this line item? It's always, no, it's back in workshops and such. Well, when you go there, what you find is it's shared only among the 3 villages. Though the total cost for Public Works is only being borne by the 3 former villages. But it's obvious that actually the work that your people are doing is not just work that's a local expense. In fact, a lot of the work, the best examples is the rink and the pool. And well, the rink is the best, that your people are working in the rink, but they're being billed.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Councillor Arrow, but for the arena, the way that we have the arena set up, that their allotted time is already, once summer ends, winter starts, they automatically go to the arena, so
Okay.
that's a
That's
true
fine.
cost for the arena.
But there's other things like the snow shoveling and things like that.
Yes.
But how we got here was talking about the 3-ton truck, say.
Yes.
That in fact, all of our movable assets that the Public Works use should be viewed in much the same way that the human resources of the Public Works are used. Because, you know, the truck doesn't know if it's picking up garbage, which is a local expense, or carrying around a bunch of stuff for the arena. You see what I'm saying? Is it, so it's actually, when we finally figure out, and for instance, your time, I think, as the director is actually broken. You are like apportioned, some of you is apportioned to the utilities, some is apportioned to the villages only, and some is apportioned to shared. And that's a good thing. That's the proper way to do it. And in much the way you're doing it there, the movable assets should be thought of in virtually the same way, because the truck doesn't know what it's doing.
So suffice it to say that
We'll come back with the
they'll
report.
come back, and I would like to get through the fiscal services, break for lunch, then have our closed session right after that. That way we don't ask the people to leave and.
Okay, so the last question I have is on the 3-ton truck. If I understand, we have a 3-ton truck that we're going to replace with another 3-ton truck, is that
Correct.
what I understand? And what's that 3-ton truck used for? Is that just a general truck? That's not the garbage truck.
No, that truck would be, sorry, Ian.
The 3-ton truck is it's one of those assets that will be used, both shared and within it, just the villages as well. It gives us the capacity to, when we start ditching, to load dirt into the back of the truck, go and dump it. So this is why we're going for a like-for-like solution on this one. It saves us from going up to a whole 10-ton tipper truck, and it's doing a job that the other smaller truck can't. So at the moment, it's just a like-for-like upgrade on that. The other trucks, when we start looking at them, there's going to be a bit more analysis goes into,
Gotcha.
is this the correct equipment for us to be buying that allows us to do what we need to do.
All right, so we beat that one to death.
Ready to go.
All right, we'll move on now to cost of issuing and selling new debentures, which is fairly minimal. Oh, no, sorry, capital lease arrangements?
That's for the new fire truck,
Okay.
for the first year.
So that's a set price. Bank service charge fees, which is a slight increase, I'm not surprised by that. Any questions on the increase in bank service charge?
Is that just interest and stuff from borrowing?
That would also include, we have a different bank program with RBC Express, which allows us to do more things, including direct deposit once I have the time to do the training. And it also includes our Interact charges.
Okay,
Sorry, I just need to back up. Where is the 32,697? That is for the truck. Where is that showing up here?
32,697.
It's actually, if you look on this, at 2.8.1.1.1.
Correct. So the total is 83. So 32 of that truck alone is being shared equally, and then
And for interest or long-term debt?
yeah.
No.
So what is that 32,697 that's being shared?
Interest on long-term debt, that would be fire trucks that we still owe on.
And then
In the new truck, when we switch it up,
is those other
there'll be
three
an
numbers
interest.
added?
Pardon?
Is those other three numbers added? The 10, the 33, and the 6. That's not on the
tool.
the tool. Sorry, the tool. It shows a shared service of 32,697. And it also shows 3 former villages, roughly of 50,000.
So for the former villages, that would be for, there's a current debentures for the multicultural building, the arena, the chairlift, and that were, like John had discussed, that an amalgamation that they were to remain with the former municipalities. And then the 3-ton truck and the golf club road replacement.
Does that answer your question?
No, but
Maybe you can get an answer after the break.
I think she gave us somewhere in some of the documentation, a list of the debentures, which was
I know, I don't know, I don't have it on here, but,
why they were
It's further
assigned.
in the front of our document before.
oh, is it in the,
section.
before all this, sorry?
Yeah.
I guess what it looks like is that, so I've written my notes that 32,697 is for a truck. Is that correct?
Those are for 2 of the fire trucks we already own, plus
Fire.
so we'll have one, and I'm predicting have one interest payment once we put the new fire truck into venture in the fall. So that would be like a scale of what we see in the next 10 years.
But the golf club road might change, well, it's a
Yes.
decision of council to leave it there for further infrastructure or get rid of it for future.
Well, like next, we have to
If we
have it
get the
included in
funding.
our budget for our borrowing application. We have to show that we have the money there if we don't get the funding. So
Yeah.
if that surplus of money, it'd be a decision of council to allot it where they like to.
So I guess what you're suggesting is, since it's come up on the screen, I'm gonna ask another question. So I guess what you're suggesting is, if in the event that we don't get any funding for the golf club road, that shared expense is only on the 3 former villages.
Correct. Because the 3 former villages were the only ones that paid for roads.
That's a very huge expense for 3 former.
I
small-
agree.
And it's not the only culvert that we have in our
That's
municipality
correct.
that's getting that way.
Yeah. Okay. Can I move on?
Yep.
All right. Was there any other questions on bank service charges? If not, transfer to capital reserve. So that would be a transfer to capital reserve anticipated in 2025?
May I explain this
Yes,
one?
please.
Yes.
So, part of it was a resolution of council in the previous year when we bought the Dodge, so a portion of that's from Alma. But I know one of the sticking points, I believe, was with Councillor Elderkin, and I believe you as well, is that some of, when we did the tax rates last year, there was a chunk of surplus that the former villages didn't get to see. So my recommendation, and council has full authority to take it out if they so please, but it was to be able to have those 3 former municipalities at the same tax rate based on having the same expenses. So my recommendation would be give those former municipalities to bring up to those tax rates would be their own reserve that could be used for their infrastructure and those subunits. But it is completely up to council what they would like to do forward with that.
So it could be 0, it could be whatever.
Yes, correct.
Is that, you understand that?
I understand it, I'm
Okay.
not ready to answer the question yet though,
Okay.
because, anyway.
Well, I think I understand it too, but I'd be surprised how many of us are thinking we understand this. Is my understanding correct that this is kind of like a slush fund number, that you're putting a number in here that's necessary to actually balance the tax rates?
Correct.
So, yeah, and so this is, in a way, an indication of an over-contribution of these subunits in order to balance the tax rates. Is that statement correct? Okay.
Yes.
And so we can see here that there are 2 former villages that are over-contributing, according to the calculations. Where does this money get dumped to?
It would be put where council wants in those subunits.
In a capital reserve.
The capital reserve that's somehow earmarked for future use in these subunits.
Correct.
Which is, so we're really still playing this game of the subunits we're going to try and make us all the same with tax rates, which is honorable, I think. But these subunits have got these slush funds that we're building in slush funds that I don't know if they can only be used or they can be used again. Like, I don't like this is.
I can take it out. I was trying to recommend one solution to an issue that you 2 councillors feel in your communities.
Yeah, and I like it actually, because you can see what the contribution is.
we should avoid using terms like slush fund because it kind of suggests that it's irresponsible. This is not irresponsible. Setting aside a capital reserve for a future need is something that is very responsible to do.
Correct, but it's the how it gets allocated
Right.
at the time you spend it is the tricky bit that's not at all addressed here.
All right.
Go ahead.
I've had 2 very large coffees, and I'm the clerk, so I am unable to leave the room when I required to. And I do know that we have we need to maybe make a bit of a break. So can I suggest that we pick this up after lunch?
Yep.
We are not going to be able to go into in camera right away. We're going to have to start and then boot everybody. I was hoping to get this finished so that we could then allow for, well, I don't know if Kathy has anything to say. So we can adjourn.
I can call this finished because I now know
All
what
right.
this is.
So we'll adjourn for lunch and then we'll resume for an in-camera session only right after lunch. All right, everyone. Thank you. We're back in the public budget deliberations. And so we have essentially, if my records are correct, we've concluded the discussions on the general operating budget. Are there any further questions in relation to the general operating budget?
I guess where I was
Council Ward Russell, yep.
wondering, just with regards to our current insurance policy, have we ever looked into asking for a rider to be attached to our insurance? I know that a lot of organizations, not for all the community individuals are asking for insurance to be granted an insurance payment. And I'm just wondering if we ever looked at our own personal insurance and asked for a rider, because I believe that might be actually cheaper than paying for all of these different organizations that are requesting us to pay for their insurance.
So on the risk management side of insurance, there's certain things that have to be in place in order for it to be insured. So as an example, on a rec center, I mean, that there was an MOU in place that dictated who was responsible for upkeep, how often was it being upkeep, like what kind of repairs were being made, and so the level of responsibility and who's doing what has to be there in order for a rider to be established, like for the insurance to be established. Having an umbrella, a rider that would take care of all these different things doesn't apply, because you need to know what it is that you are, what is the municipality responsible for, and what the liability is on what your responsibilities are. It's very hard to insure a third party under your insurance if you've had nothing to do with any of the maintenance or upkeep of what you want to insure. Does that make sense? And that's in the case of the Alma Recreation Centre, was the MOU that was in place that said that we had some oversight. So without oversight on the municipality's part, the insurer risk management team doesn't really want to manage that risk.
I think we just need to be careful though, because we could get into a large expense throughout the year with a lot of individuals coming and asking us to pay for that insurance. It could get, and I would just be interested to check with our current and possibly others to see what other municipalities are doing as well, because I think that we've got some learning to do from others that we can gain.
Okay, so that answered your question, Councillor?
Sure.
Sort of. Yes, Councillor Coates.
I just got I did some on Kodiak cycling, and I was advised that if we did to pay their premium, not show it as a premium, give them a grant for it. Because if they got 5 million or 2 million, whatever, it happened that 2 million went and blew it in a court case, okay, for instance. Anything else would come back on the village, fund the okay. So it's best for them, and I think Linda, I believe you're advised the rink in Alma to try to get their own.
We're working
coverage
with them currently,
the same
correct,
way,
yeah.
and maybe we can
Mhm.
have a rider on it that we would be covered, but if we're paying their premium, it's seen by the insurance company that we paid the premium, we're the responsible.
We can look into that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and, I don't think putting a rider on that we would,
Benefit from
pay
that?
it over from the Albert. It's not too bad, and we either give them a grant or say here, you know, whatever.
Okay,
So,
We should take that screen off.
yeah, take that off.
because in the 25 years ago, I was in an insurance seminar, and they said the Canadian laws are better following the United States, and they sue the person that's got the most money to pay. And we see it all the way. It's going right over.
Were there any other questions in relation to the operating budget? So, as I understand it, administration is now going to need to put all these numbers together and come back at our next meeting, correct? Okay. Is there sufficient amount of information available to at least look at the utility budget, or no?
A lot of it will change for some of the adjustments that have been recommended the last two meetings. So they will vary from what I was able to first present. So if we want, I can give a rough idea of where we're projecting, but some of those numbers may change with some of the recommended changes.
Because as I understand, there wasn't really much information, if at all, for a proposed budget in, oh, or was there?
I didn't
Yeah.
put rates in because I really like to see what our surpluses, our deficits are after the capital adjustment by the auditors before I present a number.
So,
We should be getting it at the beginning of December.
so that's gonna make it more difficult for us, but I'm just wondering about the value of even having a conversation around utility.
I would agree, until we have,
Numbers,
Yeah.
right.
right. Council, what about everyone else? What are your thoughts? You agree?
If we're gonna know what we're working with, to have, just arbitrarily have a conversation and knowing that it's gonna change.
Yeah. Well, if I'm not mistaken, that would mean the end of our conversation for today. What about a follow-up meeting? Are we proposing that be decided in next week sometime? In terms of when a next meeting would be scheduled, or how much time do you need? Should we have something just to come back and look at the general operating budget?
My preference, and I'll throw this out for council's decision, would be to have us go back and make the changes that we've discussed to date. As long as we can continue having these conversations, then when we get the finalized numbers, it's going to be a quicker turnaround to get us to the point where we can approve the budget. So if we kind of just leave it all on the table and come back too late, then we're going to be maybe scrambling at the end. So my recommendation would be that we schedule another meeting, maybe for a week's time, not on a Saturday preferably, but in a week or so. Would that be sufficient time for our treasurer? In that case, we may have some additional information. We'll just keep filling in the blanks as we get the information coming into us. And at least that way there we can see what the changes we've discussed so far have done to the bottom line as we see it now. And then just keep moving in the proper direction. That would be my recommendation. I would like to point out too that we also received an email this week with the RCMP costs. Maybe now would be a time.
Those are in there.
I don't know if it's ever been discussed in camera though, so that we see a far less increase in RCMP costs than we initially anticipated, and that should have a large effect on what our budget will look like.
Yes.
Just a question
Deputy
here
Mayor.
is, there's no intention that we'll proceed with the approval of the general operating budget without seeing the utility budget in an advanced state, correct?
Correct. We'll come back. Again, I think we can do both. We'll come back and do them all together as a final conversation, and then hopefully then be able to approve it.
Yes, because I will object to being asked to vote on the general operating budget without
Yeah.
being aware of where we're at with the utility budgets.
Yeah, no, I feel that, getting all the documents together, having these conversations, getting the numbers,
Okay, good.
that fly
And
has been all
obvious-
morning.
And obviously, you know, our deliberations today are going to be posted to our website, the video, so if anybody wants to look at it. I have seen a number of comments come in already. That doesn't mean, my feet, that doesn't mean that once this is posted that we won't get further comments. It doesn't necessarily preclude us from having another meeting about the general operating budget, because it is one of the more significant items. Having that conversation, seeing what the proposed end result would be, having that in public again, that way it just increases the amount of opportunity for the public to take a look at it. And then at least they're showing that we're working towards a better number all the time. But I agree with you, at the end of the day, the approval is actually in a resolution in council.
Of
But-
both,
but-
it's
At the
both.
Of
Yeah.
both at the same time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
But
right.
that doesn't mean that we can't be having conversations at different times for each one of them and coming out with a better product. Yes.
I'm not sure if you're alluding to this or not, but I know we have been asked, and we did promise the residents in 2024 that we would do better and be more transparent in getting this information out. Is there any plans on having a session with the public? I mean, I understand that today was available to them, but I believe that we owe it to the residents of Funny Albert to do that. So I'm wondering if we could not. I would hope that could be done before we'd even try to approve such document.
Recognizing that once this council reaches a final number, it is a final number.
That's why we
Yep.
don't want to go to that point. I think we need to go to
Yep.
the public first before that is actually.
So what are you proposing individual?
Not individual, no. I think it just needs to be one session and, they
But
can-
there's an opportunity today and nobody's here.
I understand that, but, until that number is formalized or we have a better idea of what that number is, I think that's what needs to happen.
Once we have an idea what the rates are gonna be, because there's probably not much sense in having a conversation unless we know what the proposed rates are gonna be, or are you suggesting something other than that?
No, I think the bottom line is what those proposed rates are.
Okay.
And if they, maybe they might have some questions at that point that we might be able to go back and look at that point. But before council can approve such document, I do believe the public needs to be.
Is that what everyone wants? Councillor Elderkin?
I guess I never really thought about it. I think the public needs to be engaged, but I do think they've had an opportunity to be engaged, and I've certainly had conversations about the budget. I'm not sure.
So I kind of look at it in terms of, there was a survey that was sent out. There was several public meetings, and we've had one person, well, two people actually show up for our public, three show up for our public meetings. There doesn't seem to be, I don't know if it's disinterest or they're just not sure, but there was certainly the opportunity on last Tuesday and also today for the public to be here, and they've chosen not to come for a variety of reasons, I suspect. But we have been much more transparent this year than last. Last year, these conversations all took place behind the scenes. They weren't in public meetings. These are public meetings. So that is an increase in transparency from what has happened in the past. Now, not everybody sees it that way, but it is, in my view.
The message that went out, I think, from what I'm seeing, may have been misinterpreted, that public thought that if they came to these sessions, they were unable to participate at all. And the intent of it was to say you can't interact while the proceedings are going on. So maybe the message out there was not the best message. And if we are having future meetings here, there is opportunity at all of those future meetings before we get to the final document that maybe the message can go back out to the public saying that there is a session at the end that allows you to get up to a microphone and speak. So if we can maybe communicate it a little bit differently than we did the first time, maybe in subsequent meetings we will see more people come to the
Just say,
attend.
you know, this could be viewed as your opportunity to say something.
So rather than having something separate, we maybe can just advertise our next upcoming meetings differently.
I agree. I think, you know, we as a council, we said we were gonna do better. I think we have a little bit, but I think we just need to go the next step. And maybe make sure that everybody realizes you can come, and you are gonna have an opportunity to speak. Get that out there, and I think it'll go a long way, all the way around.
Yeah.
So in that vein then, if we were choosing a meeting time 1 week from now, when would you like to see it that you feel that the most amount of people would be able to participate?
I would suggest if you're trying to get the public to go, you don't do it during the day, obviously. You would have to do it one evening, or you would have to do it again on a Saturday.
So that, I'll leave that out for council to decide when they would like the next meeting to be.
The next
And then we will
Saturday is-
communicate it.
The next Saturday is a day for the parade, so.
I don't think we should personally leave the table until a date is set.
Yeah.
Because that's, once we go down that road, it's,
So look at your calendars.
Next Saturday is actually the 30th.
Oh, it is, it's
Yeah.
not, oh, okay.
You're a week ahead.
What's that?
You're a week ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Next week's
Christmas in the country, though.
Oh,
It is
so
Christmas.
this
This-
meeting is an extra meeting for people to come to talk about the budget. Is
But it
that-
will also be, we'll have the updated numbers, so we can quickly review those updated numbers, provide it.
So it's not an extra meeting. That's.
It's just, it's
just
ongoing.
It's another meeting that
A
has,
budget meeting,
that's
yeah.
Correct.
clearly in part of the invitation, or
Yep.
that there's a point where they can engage
And
directly, which is.
we would have a sense of what
Yeah,
what the new proposed rates would look like,
yeah,
right?
because I think you hit the nail on the head that there was, the previous messaging was
Yeah.
misconstrued,
Yeah.
and that if we're more clear on the next meeting, it'll be better.
So
I'm
what about
also-
December 4th,
December 4th, that's the day before,
day after our council.
day after our council meeting. I'm usually,
That's 10 days away.
But we're already going into this week, and we haven't got all the changes, so there's still gonna be a possibility of a little back and forth that gives us a leadway if there's,
That means you're gonna have to pass the budget at a special meeting.
I have a previous commitment, but I can dump that previous commitment.
So December 4th, daytime or
no, I would
No,
evening?
no,
suggest
evening.
evening.
Evening, yeah.
And it could be a long meeting.
Long night.
Yeah.
Bring the coffee.
Could we say 5:30 then? And where do you wanna go?
I would suggest someplace that's capable of holding
Kiwanis.
the Kiwanis would be capable of holding more people.
You think there's gonna be that many people?
Well, the suggestion is that some people would be interested in going, so like, don't do it at the Steve Museum,
But you
and I
realize
would
that-
suggest not
We are
doing it
still
here
on
because it's
camera.
cold.
But what this is
We're still-
Oh, yeah.
meaning
Post it in the press next week.
Pushing it home.
Forward, yes.
is we're gonna have a council meeting on the 3rd, for which we will have wasted any opportunity at that council meeting to do anything with the budget, really. So we'll do some other business, but not the budget, which is really the main thing that we need to do at a regular meeting. So then we're gonna have this budget meeting, which means, by definition, we have a special meeting later on to pass the thing.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, because more and more meetings.
All right.
You know, we're not gonna get our audited financials at this point until after
The
December
council meeting.
5th, well, yeah, after December 5th.
Okay.
This is now, if I was to make a recommendation, it would be somewhere in between, if we were looking at December 8th is when we could get the financial information, we hope. somewhere in between now and then to do a meeting and then a final meeting after we get the budget information, but that's
you
kind of a
want-
moving target still,
So do you wanna postpone our budget meeting till the week after?
Oh, I was saying
I
to
would-
do it a little bit earlier and then have more of a final one after where we can look at the final document. If everybody's happy with it, we could approve it in that same meeting, that final meeting.
Like next Thursday. On the
Thursday
28th.
doesn't work for me. Thursday, Friday doesn't work for me.
Let's stay with the target date of the 4th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's stay with the 4th. And it's yeah. All right, so unless there's other discussion, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved by Councillor Jonah. Thanks very much, everybody, and thanks for everybody's input, and thanks for administration for being here.